Chapter 3968. I can't hold my liquor, so I don't dare to drink too much. Xiao Hua looked at Chrysalis's pig head and almost wanted to smash it. However, he endured it and faintly replied, when second Wangye proposed a toast, this one also drank it. Immortal friend Chrysalis. Not too far away, Chrysalis seemed to have sensed that something was amiss. Holding a wine bottle in his hand, he walked over and said with a smile, Come, let me offer you a toast. I bumped into you when I paid my respects to His Highness. Our cabins were also next to each other. Haha, fellow Daoist Xiao is right. Chrysalis laughed heartily as he pointed at Xiao Hua and said, Didn't I also follow fellow Daoist Xiao by fate? That's why I'm here to propose a toast. Come, fellow immortal Kuei, let's drink. When Kuei spoke up to hear, he seemed to have realized something. He took out a fist-sized wine cup from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua. Fellow immortal, this is the wine cup of the human race that I obtained from Star Picking Tower. It seems to be quite suitable for fellow immortal. Today, I'll give it to fellow immortal. Fellow immortal, please drink with it. Haha, very good. Xiao Hua activated the demonic energy in his body, and a strand of wine flew out from the wine bottle and into the wine cup. When the cup was full, Xiao Hua raised his cup and said, A toast to the two of you. Please. Chrysalis and Centipede raised their wine bottles, and the three demons downed the wine in one gulp. Before Chrysalis could say anything else, Centipede pulled Chrysalis's arm and said with a smile, Let's go. I'll borrow your flowers to offer you a few more cups. Present Buddha with borrowed flowers? Hehe, fellow immortal. You seem to be very familiar with the vocabulary of the human race. When Chrysalis heard this, he simply abandoned Xiao Hua and followed Chrysalis. The imperial wine of the North Sea Dragon Palace entered Xiao Hua's stomach and was instantly refined into the power of the stars and moon. However, the spicy taste was still somewhat choking. Xiao Hua thought for a moment. With a slight movement of his fingers, some spirit wine fell into the wine cup. Then, he held the wine cup and fiddled with it while drinking a little. Seeing Xiao Hua's short stature, the other demons didn't force him to toast like a pupa. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, an angry roar suddenly came from the head of the table, into the sea. All the demons were shocked, and the entire hall immediately fell silent. The demons did not know what had happened, and they all looked at Ao Jing. At this time, Ao Jing's face was flushed red. He held an empty wine bottle in his hand and glared at Ao Xian, who was standing quietly in front of him. Ao Xian straightened her back and replied neither haughtily nor humbly, Second Prince, according to the plan, we shouldn't enter the sea at this time. If I say I'm going to the sea, I'm going to the sea. In the entire dragon boat, who doesn't dare to listen to me? Ao Jing waved his sleeves, and a dragon claw appeared. Clearly, Ao Jing was too drunk to maintain a complete transformation. Ao Jing thought for a moment and said in a low voice, Your Highness, there are many reefs in this sea area. If the dragon boat enters the sea, it will cause danger. Haha, I'm a dragon. The North Sea is my home. Why would I be afraid of a reef? Quick, if I tell you to enter the sea, then enter the sea. Ao Jing shouted, If you still don't agree, I'll destroy you. Ao Xian said stubbornly, No. At this time, not only are there Sea Clan members of the North Sea Dragon Palace in the dragon boat, there are also demons of the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm. Many of them don't know how to escape through water. Before Ao Xian could finish speaking, Ao Jing's dragon claw slashed in the air. Ao Xian's armor immediately shattered, and blood gushed out from Ao Xian's dragon body. Second Prince, Second Prince. At this moment, a dragon general similar to Ao Xian hurriedly flew over and shouted, Please calm down. I'll command the dragon boat to enter the sea. Yes, Ao Ju, command the dragon boat to enter the sea. In the future, this dragon boat will be under your command. Ao Jing nodded. His dragon eyes were bloodshot as he pointed his dragon claw at Ao Xian and said, Go, imprison this damned person in a cage. This. Ao Ju smiled and said, General Ao Xian has contributed greatly this time. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to explain to the Dragon King if he's imprisoned in a cage. Why don't we imprison him in the cabin? Yes, I'll leave it to you. Ao Jing raised his hand and picked up another wine bottle. He drank it in one gulp and said, "How dare he go against me? So what if he contributed greatly? What should be destroyed will still be destroyed." Ao waved his hand, and several sea generals flew over and carried the dispirited Ao Xian away. Ao Jing raised his cup again and said, "Fellow immortals, please drink this cup. Then, I'll invite you to see the beautiful scenery of North Sea. Thank you, Prince." Seeing that Ao Jing was already drunk, the demons did not dare to say anything else. They hurriedly raised their cups and drank. Xiao Hua also raised his wine cup in response. However, he frowned and looked at the drunk Ao Jing and Ao Xian, who had been taken away. He found it funny. Damn it, the wine of the North Sea Dragon Palace is strong, and it's easy to get drunk after drinking it. However, Ao Jing is a dragon. How big is his body? How can he get drunk after drinking such strong wine? Moreover, Ao Xian's trick seems fake no matter how I look at it. What kind of show are they putting on? Could it be that they already know about the Heavenly Abode Rivers plan? While thinking, Xiao Hua had already figured out that this trick was a little superficial for the human race. Although Xiao Hua was not good at scheming, he could still see it. However, Ao Jing wanted to deceive the Sea Clan of the Heavenly Abode River. These Sea Clan members were not as scheming as the human race and might fall for it. However, Xiao Hua was worried for a moment and felt helpless. He did not know who had come to the Heavenly Abode River, nor did he know how to inform the Sea Clan of the Heavenly Abode River. His only plan now was to hope that the Sea Clan of the Heavenly Abode River would not be like the demons of the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm and not be able to see that this was an obvious trick. Look, are outside." Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, several monsters suddenly raised their cups and pointed to the outside of the dragon boat and shouted. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that the dragon boat was rapidly descending. In the sky above the North Sea below the dragon boat, monstrous waves were surging. Hurricanes swept up the seawater and scattered it into the air, as if a huge palm had reached out from the depths of the North Sea. Boom! Although the inside of the dragon boat was very quiet, the moment the dragon boat crashed into the sea, there were still some strong vibrations and whistling sounds coming from outside the dragon boat. Ao Jing was originally holding a wine cup, but his entire body suddenly fell to the ground, the wine drenching his dragon robe. "Your Highness, Your Highness." A few sea generals shouted and hurriedly came over to support Ao Jing. Ao Jing opened his hazy dragon eyes and looked at the blue sea outside. He stammered, This is where the North Sea Dragon Clan should be. Flying in the sky. That's what the Feather Clan of the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm wants to do. Come, drink, drink." At this time, the dragon boat had already entered the sea. Although there were huge waves on the surface of the sea, the bottom of the sea was calm again. The blue sea water was like a huge crystal, translucent and sparkling. Schools of colorful sea fish swam freely in the sea. Seeing the huge dragon boat rushing in, these sea fish desperately scattered. And as the dragon boat continued to sink, the shadows of reefs that looked like sea beasts appeared one by one, just like the mountains on the ordinary land. There was no light at the bottom of the sea, but a faint brilliance flickered outside the dragon boat. The layers of seaweed, seashells, and strange rust spots on the reefs appeared, looking quite desolate. The group of sea race naturally turned a blind eye to the situation at the bottom of the sea, but some of the demons in the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm were indeed very interested. They all looked intoxicated. Until Ao Jing shouted again, "Fellow immortals, come, this king salutes you all and welcomes you all to the North Sea." The group of demons came back to their senses at this time and shouted, "The North Sea is such a place of spirit, so it can give birth to a dragon like the second king. We salute the second king and the North Sea Dragon Palace, haha." Ao Jing laughed, raised the wine bottle and drank big mouthfuls. Boom! At this time, the whole dragon boat shook violently, and then pieces of gravel and broken seaweed flew past the edge of the dragon boat. The dragon boat obviously hit a reef. "Haha, fellow immortals, don't worry about it." Ao Jing laughed and said, "It's just a small reef. How can the dragon boat built by the North Sea Dragon Palace be afraid of these small rocks? Come, drink." Ao Jing's banquet lasted for a whole night, and no one knew how much wine he drank. Anyway, Xiao Hua knew that since the dragon boat entered the sea, The sound of collision was incessant, and the vibration was constant. However, no one dared to discourage Ao Jing's drinking spirit. They only shouted to drink, and no one mentioned flying out of the North Sea. After the banquet, the group of demons returned to the quiet room in the cabin. Ao Jing, who was already drunk like mud, shook his huge dragon body and slowly transformed. After a while, his eyes flashed with a fierce light, and he whispered to the dragon generals around him, "Did you see any clues?" Reporting to the king. A dragon general bowed and said, "In the area I observed, there were 4 demons who saw General Ao Shen being scolded, and their faces showed gloating. I also read the information of these 4 demons. 2 of them are from Yuling Bay, and the other 2 are from the remote sea area of the North Sea." Then, another dragon general stepped forward and said, "In the area I was in, there were 3 demons of the 1,000 Demon Saint realm who were a bit abnormal. These 3 demons all have a request from the North Sea Dragon Palace." Then, all the dragon generals reported the situation they saw to Ao Jing. Ao Jing listened and nodded slightly. His eyes swept across the whole hall, and looked at the positions of the demons who were acting strangely. However, after the dragon generals finished speaking, his gaze fell on the few jade cases, including Xiao Hua's. A thought-provoking look flashed across his eyes. "Looks like a simple trick of self-injury won't be able to trick these old fogies," Ao Jing said. "I still need to add fuel to the fire. Sigh, it's a pity that this girl was chosen by Old Seven, so I can't go all out. Otherwise, why would I go through so much trouble? Yes, we will listen to the king's orders." The dragon generals bowed and answered. Boom! At this moment, there was another tremor, and the dragon boat smashed another reef into pieces. Ao Ju hurriedly said, "King, there are many reefs in this sea area, and it's not suitable for the dragon boat to move. Although the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace is not afraid of these reefs, it will inevitably damage the demon array of the dragon boat. In the future, it will be safer to pass through the eye of the North Sea wind. Now that the banquet is over, I think it's better to fly." Chapter 3969. Since we're putting on an act, we have to complete it. Wouldn't we be giving up halfway if we took off now? Wouldn't Ao Shen's suffering be in vain? Ao Jing said disapprovingly. That's true. Ao Ju was already a little uneasy as he whispered, "But we still have to rely on this dragon boat to pass through the eye of the wind. Otherwise, if we detour, we will be delayed again. If we capture the remnants of the Heavenly Abode River, so what if we lose the dragon boat?" Ao Jing sneered. "This time, I want to use the little princess of the Heavenly Abode River as bait and kill these crazy dragons at all cost." At this point, Ao Jing looked at Ao Ju and asked, "Can we get news of Jiang Sheng of the Heavenly Abode River?" Ao Ju's face darkened as he smiled apologetically. "Your Highness, even after the dragon boat left Yuling Bay, I still couldn't find the whereabouts of the Immortal Palace's Confucian cultivator. I'm afraid he took Jiang Sheng far away from Yuling Bay. Of course, I also vaguely saw some suspicious Confucian cultivators in Yuling Bay, but these Confucian cultivators seem to be different from the ones in the arena." Chimpage. Ao Jing snorted and asked, "What do you mean by your last sentence? Do you think there's something wrong with my arrangements? Is the Confucian cultivator who kidnapped Jiang Sheng still in Yuling Bay?" No. Ao Ju hurriedly replied. "Your Highness, there must be a deeper meaning behind your arrangements. I'm afraid I can't see through the peculiarity." Ao Jing nodded slightly and said, "If it was Ao Shen, he would definitely know." "Yes." Ao Ju smiled apologetically. "I can't compare to General Ao Shen. He could infiltrate the enemy's rear alone and capture the little princess of the Heavenly Abode River. This is a plan I would never have dreamed of. Yes, there's nothing in this world that can't be done." Ao Jing sighed as well. "In Feather Spirit Bay, my North Sea Dragon Palace is not the only powerful force. Not only can Zhai Xinglu contend with my North Sea Dragon Palace, even the Sea Soul Scholar from the Lilai Trading Company can challenge me. I clearly know that the Confucian cultivator may be in Zhai Xinglu or with the Sea Spirit Scholar, but I cannot shed all pretense of cordiality. This is because the Confucian cultivator's cultivation is too high, and I can't get hold of any evidence against him. Even Benwang can't do it, so how can you catch him? In fact, The entire Yuling Bay has been infiltrated by various forces. I know that the Dongtian River is in Yuling Bay, but I can't find any trace of them. It's all my fault for being incompetent and unable to help the prince with his burdens. Aoju hurriedly knelt down as he spoke. The other dragon generals did not dare to delay and also knelt down to beg for forgiveness. Aojing hurriedly got up and personally walked in front of Aoju. He helped him up and said to the other dragon generals, "You all should get up too. This prince is not blaming you for telling you this. I just want to tell you that although Yuling Bay is the territory of the North Sea Dragon Palace, it is also the territory of the Confucian cultivators on the hidden immortal continent. My father gave Yuling Bay to me, which is a great responsibility. You are my confidants and also my support. Only when you risk your life for me can I have a decisive voice in the Dragon Palace. I should be the one thanking you all. If Xiao Hua was here, his eyeballs would definitely fall out of their sockets. That absurd prince who could copulate with Yaroji in front of the monster race was actually so scheming. Then, Xiao Hua would definitely use all kinds of escape techniques to escape from this dragon boat. Even if he couldn't escape, he would definitely use the hallucinatory pearl to change his appearance, so that the dragons of the Heavenly Abode River wouldn't be able to find him again. Ao Jing's display was too terrifying. How could an ordinary dragon compare to a prince cultivated by the Dragon Palace? Unfortunately, Xiao Hua did not dare to attract Ao Jing's attention. After he returned to the cabin, he immediately activated the monster array in the quiet room. After probing it with his primordial thought, he casually lay down on the ground. Although he did not meditate like ordinary Daoist cultivators, the primordial spirits in his body began to cultivate faster. He even took out the Crimson Infant technique to study again. The Crimson Infant technique was really broad and profound. The incomplete scattering nascent soul technique that Shen Songzi had previously obtained was just the most basic part of the Crimson Infant technique. Moreover, there were many deviations in this part. Fortunately, the scattered nascent souls in Xiao Hua's lower dantian had just gone through the initial tribulation. Although there were some deviations, it did not have a particularly big impact. Xiao Hua first put the cultivation of these scattered nascent souls on the right track according to the Crimson Infant technique, and then comprehended the rest. However, before Xiao Hua could comprehend 10% of the Crimson Infant technique, the words in the Crimson Infant technique were abnormally obscure. Xiao Hua felt that his nascent soul could not cultivate at all. After careful consideration, Xiao Hua finally understood why Do Shanjun did not set up a restriction in Mo Yuntong. It was because Do Shanjun knew that it was impossible for him to fully comprehend and cultivate. This was also what Do Shanjun said. It was just for Xiao Hua to use as a reference and let the cultivation of his physical body match the cultivation of his nascent soul. However, Xiao Hua's problem arose again. Xiao Hua's physical body was a demon body, and the holy bloodline was the foundation of the physical body's cultivation. At this time, the Dao sect's Crimson Infant technique relied on the physical body, but only the meridians of the entire body. Only by relying on these meridians could Xiao Hua advance step by step according to the Dao sect's Crimson Infant technique. Only then could he cultivate to the spirit severing stage, void refinement stage, and other realms. Since purely cultivating the holy bloodline could allow one to become a great sage and break through the void, and purely cultivating the physical body could also allow one to ascend, then which one should Xiao Hua choose? Of course, if it was an ordinary demon or cultivator, they would definitely not face such a head-scratching happiness. As long as they had a path to heaven, it was enough for them to cultivate for a lifetime. Moreover, on this path of cultivation, they had to hurry and step into the void before the end of their lifespan. Who could compare with Xiao Hua? There were actually 4 paths to heaven to choose from: Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Demon. The Crimson Infant technique is obviously of a higher level than the Daoist cultivation techniques. According to common sense, I should abandon the Daoist cultivation techniques and only cultivate the Crimson Infant technique. Xiao Hua, who had always been stingy and greedy, unconsciously felt that it was difficult to choose. However, the Crimson Infant technique can only be used to cultivate a scattered nascent soul in the 3 continent. It can't be used on the physical body. Moreover, All the Daoist cultivation techniques clearly state that the physical body is the basis for ascension. It is too difficult for a nascent soul without a physical body to ascend. Since I have a physical body, I naturally have to rely on my physical body to cultivate. There is no need for me to choose the extremely difficult Crimson Infant technique, right? Previously, when I was in the aura refining realm, I cultivated as much as the 18th layer. Admittedly, my harvest was great, but the hardships and dangers within are not enough to describe to others. Now, if I want to purely cultivate the Crimson Infant technique, it will naturally be somewhat similar to the 18th layer of the aura refining realm. However, why must I give up on the cheap path of cultivation and insist on walking the difficult path? Especially now, I am afraid that a great disaster will soon arrive. Raising my cultivation level and strength is the only way to escape this disaster, right? Forget it, even a cultivator like Senior Do is advising me to walk the normal path. I have no reason to make things difficult for myself. Since he had made his decision, Xiao Hua temporarily stopped comprehending the Crimson Nascent Soul technique. On one hand, he used his comprehension to compare with the Daoist cultivation method to improve his cultivation. He strived to match the cultivation of his meridians to the nascent soul realm. On the other hand, he entered the space with his mind and refined the dark breaking pill according to the pill recipe. Do Shan Jun gave Xiao Hua the breaking darkness pill, but how could those few breaking darkness pills be enough for Xiao Hua? On that day, Xiao Hua's nebula golden core was used to nurture his nascent soul. Now, his nebula nascent soul was even more mysterious than before. Perhaps, Xiao Hua would need more than 2,000 breaking darkness pills before he could step into the severing divine stage? Thinking about this terrifying number, Xiao Hua felt a headache coming on. His nascent soul was a foodie. It was really easy for Jade Archive Xiao Hua to refine the breaking darkness pill inside his space. However, for his own safety, Jade Archive Xiao Hua didn't dare to be too hasty. Although he didn't use a pill furnace to refine, he still followed the pill formula of the breaking darkness pill. He threw spiritual herbs into the spiritual fire in front of him. He meticulously refined the impurities, melted the liquid, and condensed the pill. Jade Archive Xiao Hua wasn't refining the pill alone. Beside him, Xiao Guo was looking at him curiously. Following Jade Archive Xiao Hua's instructions, she quickly brought the appropriate spiritual herbs from the spiritual grass garden to him. Of course, in this space, it was easier for Jade Archive Xiao Hua to find spiritual herbs compared to Xiao Guo. However, Jade Archive Xiao Hua wasn't Jade Archive Xiao Hua. He still liked to be lively. With Xiao Guo helping him, he didn't feel lonely. At this time, Xiao Hua's space was already 2 million miles in size. Moreover, with the improvement of Xiao Hua's cultivation, it was expanding every moment. In this space, in addition to Xiao Hua's disciples in seclusion, there were more than 10,000 disciples of green-robed Xiao Hua who were bitterly cultivating. The first part of the space was the center. It was full of spiritual herbs and rice. There were also the dream sea butterfly, water pattern butterfly, and other spiritual herbs that had entered the space, but there were still no signs of them waking up. Jade Archive Xiao Hua attached great importance to the center of the space. He laid down many barriers to separate these different spiritual herbs, allowing them to absorb the power of the stars and moon and nurture their own vitality. Therefore, in this boundless spirit field, only the spirit-seeking mouse could be seen flying nimbly on the spirit grasses with the wind. Even the Ganoderma horse was fleeing in front of it, as if it was afraid of being devoured by the spirit-seeking mouse. While Jade Archive Xiao Hua was refining pills, his gaze fell on the empty land and mountains in the distance. He couldn't help but sigh. He really wanted to see people farming in this land, hunting in this mountain range, and fishing in this river. Old Master. Suddenly, a timid voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ear. What's wrong? Are you tired? This little one, can I refine pills for you? Oh. Jade Archive Xiao Hua was surprised. He looked at the cute Xiao Guo beside him in disbelief. This Xiao Guo was just like a human baby. The timidity and shyness on her face were extremely obvious. Xiao Hua remembered that the last time he called Xiao Guo out was in the profound water palace of the Sage River. At that time, Xiao Guo still couldn't speak. He really didn't expect that in just a few decades, Xiao Guo would be able to speak. Chapter 3970. Xiao Guo, do you know how to refine pills? Jade Archive Xiao Hua's heart moved as he asked with a smile. Xiao Guo's face was slightly red as she bit her lip and carefully replied, I don't know. But I sighed when I saw Master. I knew Master was tired and wanted to share Master's burden. How do you know all this? Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Guo with interest and asked softly. After all, Little Yellow and Little Black had been in this space for so long that day, but they couldn't speak. Even now, Little Silver only knew how to wander around and wasn't as smart and sensible as Xiao Guo. Xiao Guo replied with a smile, Master, after I saw it, I naturally understood. I don't know why I know. Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Guo and then at Little Silver in the distance. He somewhat understood. It was extremely difficult for plants to have spirits, but if they had spirits and didn't have a physical body or bloodline, their spirit cavities would be transparent from birth. It was true that it was easy for humans and demons to have spirits, but this spirit was blocked by the physical body and bloodline. It was rare for the spirit cavities to be transparent, so it was probably too late for them to understand. Xiao Guo, how do you want to help me? Jade Archive Xiao Hua asked with a smile. Jade Archive Xiao Hua raised his hand and waved. A blue flame appeared in the air. It really looked like the blue had surpassed the blue. Wood fire. Jade Archive Xiao Hua couldn't help but smile when he saw this flame. Xiao Guo had a body of spirit wood, so in terms of the 5 elements, she couldn't control fire. Since Xiao Guo could control fire innately, this flame was naturally the extremely rare wood fire. Many Dao pills were refined from spirit herbs, spirit fruits, and spirit wood. Metal, water, earth, and fire could be used to refine pills, but it was inevitable that the impurities of the 5 elements would be mixed into the pills. If you used wood fire to refine pills, you didn't need to use 2 advanced alchemy techniques to refine pills. The pills refined would already be top grade. Ha ha! Jade Archive Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, the heavens are really helping me. Soon after, Xiao Hua pointed his index finger towards the center of Xiao Guo's eyebrows. A multicolored vortex could be seen entering Xiao Guo's forehead. Xiao Guo's entire small body was trembling involuntarily. However, after a moment, Xiao Guo opened her eyes again. At this time, her eyes were clearer than before. Refine a Wu Kang pill first. Jade Archive Xiao Hua ordered. Yes, Master. Xiao Guo waved her hands and the parasol grass and blood-devouring grass flew out from the spiritual field. She then opened her mouth and spat out a wisp of greenwood fire, which cleanly purified the impurities. When Xiao Guo calmly refined the parasol pill, Jade Archive Xiao Hua was truly speechless. This unremarkable Xiao Guo's talent in alchemy is even more terrifying than the green-robed Xiao Hua. Therefore, Jade Archive Xiao Hua waved his hand and instructed, Xiao Guo, according to the alchemy techniques and pill recipes this old man taught you, try them one by one. You don't have to be afraid of failure, we have plenty of spirit herbs, you can take your time refining. Yes, Master. Xiao Guo was like a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of a tiger. She answered without any hesitation. Then, she started to refine various kinds of pills according to the records on the pill formula. However, when Xiao Guo refined the building foundation pill, it was not out of Jade Archive Xiao Hua's expectations. Xiao Guo's building foundation pill was not successfully refined. Looking at Xiao Guo's depressed expression, Jade Archive Xiao Hua smiled and said, Xiao Guo, the building foundation pill, Qianli pill, nascent soul pill and dark breaking pill are all used to break through the realm. They contain the alchemist's understanding of the heavenly Tao and realm. You have never cultivated, so naturally you can't refine them. When this old man has the cultivation method to cultivate, I will teach it to you. At that time, you can refine them. Yes, Master, this little one understands. Xiao Guo replied respectfully, this little one will help Master refine other pills. Good. Jade Archive Xiao Hua replied with a smile. At this moment, Jade Archive Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat, and his whole body immediately came out of the space. When his mind returned to its original position, Xiao Hua felt that the whole quiet room was shaking violently, as if the dragon boat had encountered some danger. This was something he had never encountered in his several months of cultivation. Xiao Hua stood in the quiet room and pondered for a moment. When the trembling in the quiet room stopped, he hurriedly opened the demon formation. Sure enough, the outside of the quiet room was a mess. Not only had the demon race in the quiet room come out, but there were also sounds of killing coming from outside the cabin. Oh! Xiao Hua was shocked and a little anxious. His body and mind involuntarily flew out, and he thought to himself, could it be that the sea race of the Heavenly Abode River has already taken action? If so, why didn't they inform this Xiao? However, when Xiao Hua flew out of the cabin, the fighting on the deck of the dragon boat had stopped. There were a lot of bloodstains on the ground, and there were some severed limbs of the sea race in the corners. There were even many places on the dragon boat that were still burning. It seemed that the entire dragon boat had been destroyed by the sea race of the Heavenly Abode River. Landing on the deck, Xiao Hua stood next to some demon race that rushed out of the cabin and frowned. Damn it, it's really too late. Xiao Hua didn't need to release his key sense to understand what was going on. Perhaps when the Heavenly Abode River notified this Xiao, I was refining pills in the space and didn't notice. From the looks of it, the sea race of the Heavenly Abode River has probably been wiped out. Hey! Fellow immortal Kuei, why is your complexion so ugly? Just as Xiao Hua was pondering, Chrysalis's voice came from beside him. Xiao Hua turned around and said coldly, my complexion is always like this. I haven't eaten my fill since I was young, so I can't be as fat as fellow immortal Kuei. Ha, fellow immortal Kuei. Kuei flew out and said with a smile, why do you keep making things difficult for fellow Daoist Kuei? I'm not making things difficult for anyone. Chrysalis sneered, look at the situation on this dragon boat. It must have been attacked by the enemies of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Moreover, it must have been coordinated from the inside. Perhaps there are spies among the demon race. Fellow immortal Kuei who saw this miserable situation must have some suspicions. This fellow immortal Kuei is most likely suspicious. You're crazy. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and glanced at Chrysalis. He turned around and was about to return to the cabin when a loud bugle horn sounded from the bow of the dragon boat. Then, Ao Xian's voice came, distinguished guests, please come out from your cabins. My second Marquis has a good show for everyone to enjoy. Oh! Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment and stopped, only to see Chrysalis's thoughtful gaze. Most of the demon race in the cabin had already come out. Now that they heard Ao Xian's command, another group of demon race flew out. Not long after, the sea generals of the North Sea Dragon Palace flew over from all directions with weapons in hand. They formed a formation and surrounded the demon race. Chimpage. Ao Jing snorted coldly and flew over from a high place. Behind him were a few injured dragon generals. Greetings, second Marquis. The demon race all bowed. Ao Jing flung his sleeve and said indifferently, rise. When the demon race all rose, Ao Jing clenched his teeth. His face was somewhat ferocious as he said fiercely, do you know what happened? We don't know. The demon race were baffled. Of course, Xiao Hua was among them. Bring them up. Ao Jing roared. At the edge of the dragon boat, dozens of demon race were pulled up into the air by thin ropes. As the ropes were pulled up, the demon race's bodies floated up like kites. They screamed and struggled with all their might, but the ropes seemed to be tied up in their bodies. No matter how hard they struggled, they couldn't break free. Xiao Hua hurriedly released his vital sense to see who it was. The other demon race also released their vital sense. Unfortunately, the demon race that was hung up was outside the demon formation of the dragon boat. All the demon race's vital sense was blocked, so they couldn't see who it was. Ao Jing said fiercely, I treat people with kindness. The demon race that wants to receive the favor of the North Sea Dragon Palace is kindly received by me. The quota for this trip to the North Sea Dragon Palace is limited, but I feel that, since you all have a request to the North Sea Dragon Palace, you naturally have your own difficulties. So I earnestly asked my father to allow you to bring more people. Because of this, my father scolded me. But this king's good intentions were treated as ill intent. These monsters. Look, They actually took advantage of this king's carelessness to sneak into the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Taking advantage of the conflict between this king and General Ao Xian, they actually incited Ao Xian to assassinate this king. Fortunately, Ao Xian is loyal to me. When I was drunk and punished her, she didn't hate me. She reported this important news to me at the critical moment. Tell me, do these traitors of the sea race deserve to be killed? They deserve to be killed. They deserve to be killed. The demon race clamored. The enthusiasm of the onlookers was no less than that of the demon race. The chrysalis inside the dragon boat said loudly, "Second Marquis, who is the sea race that tried to assassinate you? Are there spies of the sea race among us?" Me. Ao Jing snorted and said, "Who else could it be? Naturally, it's the sea race of the Heavenly Abode River. In the past, they challenged the dignity of the Dragon Island and were expelled from the 3 rivers and 4 seas. The Dragon Palace of the 4 seas was ordered to exterminate the Heavenly Abode River. They hold a grudge against the Dragon Palace of the 4 seas. They're always thinking about revenge." At this point, Ao Jing's expression softened. He swept his gaze across the demon race and said with a smile, "My fellow immortals have been very peaceful in the cabins during this period of time. The rebellion of the Heavenly Abode River has nothing to do with you fellow immortals. You don't need to think too much about it." Then, Ao Jing waved his dragon claw and shouted, "Kill." Yes. The sea generals agreed in unison. Then, they looked at the dragon boat again. Beams of light fell like snowflakes, landing on the bodies of the dozens of demons. Pieces of flesh were cut off from the bodies of these demons. In a few breaths, dozens of skeletons waving their hands and speaking appeared in front of the demons. "Damn it! Cut them into pieces." Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air and sighed inwardly. It seems that all the demon race of the Heavenly Abode River is dead. Even the remaining ones are quite strong. I'm afraid they won't dare to come out again. The burden of saving Xiao Yun has fallen on this Xiao's shoulders. However, since the sea race of the Heavenly Abode River has been exterminated, Ao Jing's vigilance has naturally decreased. I just need to find the dragon shell that imprisoned Xiao Yun, take it, and escape. Chapter 3971. You. Are you the Great Elder? Xiao Hua asked tentatively. What's going on? My name is Jiang Xia. The female dragon's face was filled with regret as she replied, I'm the 2nd elder of the Heavenly Abode River. The Great Elder, Jiang Tian, is currently leading the disciples of the Heavenly Abode River to seize control of the dragon boat. As for what happened here, I don't know either. However, based on the previous situation, we should have fallen into Ao Jing's trap. You acted too early. Xiao Hua was also helpless. How would I know that the Hui just now wasn't you? Sound transmissions can't be transmitted on this dragon boat, so I couldn't probe. Since he turned into a dragon and sent out a signal from the Heavenly Abode River, of course I had to act. Haha, Jiang Xia, it's really you. Ao Jing stood in the air, laughing like a cat playing with a mouse, then looked at Xiao Hua and said, This Hui of the Hui clan. Which fellow immortal of the monster clan are you? Xiao Hua sneered and replied, Do you want to know who this old man is? Explain it to this old man first and see how this old man feels. Haha, who would have the patience to know who you are? Ao Jing laughed, all the survivors of the Heavenly Abode River who fell into this king's trap will be killed. This king doesn't care who you are. However, since you want to know, this king is happy to let you know. Chimpage. Hearing this, Xiao Hua sneered again, You're just a stinky loach. Do you think this old man can't see it now? The so-called injury to Ao Xian was just a pretense, and the attack by the Heavenly Abode River was a farce. You were the one who directed it, weren't you? The purpose was to make the Sea Clan of the Heavenly Abode River relax their vigilance, thinking that they had escaped your trap. In particular, you stopped the dragon boat here, creating the illusion of a desperate situation, and lured the Heavenly Abode River to attack. Then you used the fake Long Bay to attract the attention of the Heavenly Abode River, so that the Sea Clan of the Heavenly Abode River would be exposed. In order to add fuel to the fire, you let this Hui use the signal of the Heavenly Abode River, and even used the 1000 Illusion Pearl to transform into Jiang Xia's appearance. In such a hurry, Which sea clan of the heavenly abode river could tell? Unknowingly, I fell into your trap. I presume that you have already set up troops everywhere on the dragon boat and are ambushing the sea clan in the grotto heaven? You're a human? Hearing Xiao Hua's tireless explanation, Ao Jing couldn't help but be shocked. But your demon body doesn't seem like a human's. Actually, there was no need for me to expose myself. As Xiao Hua spoke, he turned to look at Jiang Xia. Presumably, Second Elder has been keeping an eye on this old master all this time, occasionally speaking against this old master. On one hand, it's to remind this old master to pay attention, and on the other hand, it's to think that if an accident happens, you can withdraw and complete the mission of rescuing Jiang Hong, right? Not bad. Jiang Xia did not hide anything and replied, "You are one of the pillars that the Dongtian River can rely on, but we will not completely rely on the human race. If not for the danger earlier, I wouldn't have made a move." Actually, you didn't have to make a move. Xiao Hua sighed, "These little loaches can't hurt me, but since you've already made your move, I won't pursue the matter of you abandoning me." Who exactly are you? The more Ao Jing listened, the more surprised he became. Although he already had victory in his hands, he still couldn't help but ask. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes, looked at Ao Jing and said with a smile, "You only need to tell me where Jiang Hong is, and I will naturally tell you who I am." Of course Jiang Hong is here. Ao Jing flicked his sleeve and took out another long bay. He smiled and said, "Could it be that you want me to let her out for a look? If you have the ability, then let her out for a look." Xiao Hua smiled, "With your cunning nature, how could you put Jiang Hong on this dragon boat?" Aosha. Suddenly, Jiang Xia exclaimed, "Did Aosha take Jiang Hong away?" "Haha, not bad, you actually saw through this king's plan at this time, truly amazing." Ao Jing laughed, "As early as the night Ao Xian captured Jiang Hong, this king arranged for Aosha to take Jiang Hong away from Yuling Bay. Although Aosha can't enter the North Sea Dragon Palace at this time, as long as this king kills all of you, he will naturally meet up with this king before entering the North Sea Dragon Palace." Jiang Xia's face turned ashen when she heard this. The Grotto Heaven River had painstakingly schemed and plotted, but in the end, it was all for naught. They had even fallen into the biggest trap. She muttered, "If I had known this would happen, I would have sent someone. No, I would have personally followed Aosha. Is there any point in saying this now?" Ao Jing laughed very happily. "This king knows that your heavenly abode river will make some moves. Among the soldiers that you arranged to return with Aosha, there are dragon generals. The Oceanids you sent have probably been devoured long ago. You don't have to think about saving Jiang Hong anymore." Jiang Xia's ears, the battle cries grew louder and louder, and some Oceanids had already rushed to the deck. Seeing this, Ao Jing couldn't help but frown. He knew in his heart the strength of the troops that he had set up the trap. According to his previous thoughts, part of the reason why he and Jiang Xia were stalling here was to wait for the battle below the deck to end, but it seemed, the heavenly abode river's layout was far beyond his imagination. "Damn Jiang Tian!" Ao Jing cursed angrily. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Xiao Hua, and he shouted fiercely, "Jiang Tian, don't think that this king can't recognize you. Your heavenly abode river's target is Long Bay, which is Jiang Hong. How can you abandon this king?" Xiao Hua sneered, looked at Ao Jing, and said, "I have never seen a demon as narcissistic as you. Do you think you have victory in your hands? Do you think you have seen through everything? However, since you have already explained the ins and outs of the matter clearly, this old man can only promise." As he spoke, Xiao Hua's figure swayed, and after the demon cloud disappeared, a thin human figure appeared in front of the demons. You are really a human cultivator?" Ao Jing was surprised, and he frowned and asked. Xiao Hua replied indifferently, "Yes, this old man is Xiao Hua of the Dao sect." Chimpage. When Ao Jing heard that it was a Dao sect cultivator, he snorted coldly and said, "This king doesn't even care about the Confucian cultivators of the Immortal Palace. How can I be afraid of you, a Dao sect cultivator? Jiang Xia, your heavenly abode river is really hopeless. You even dare to use a Dao sect cultivator." Hearing Ao Jing's words, Xiao Hua whispered to Jiang Xia, "Second Elder, Ao Jing is too strong here. We are no match for him. Let's escape separately and meet up with the Great Elder." According to the previous plan, we will hijack the entire dragon boat. What? What plan? Jiang Xia was slightly stunned and quite puzzled. However, seeing Xiao Hua winking at her and his figure swaying, ready to fly to the edge of the deck, Jiang Xia endured the pain and urged her dragon body to follow her. At that moment, a demonic cloud suddenly appeared near Xiao Hua and Jiang Xia. Although the demonic cloud was thin, it was extremely tough, blocking their path. Looking at the thin strands of cloud, Xiao Hua believed that if he bumped into it, it would be sharper than the edge of a blade. Huff! Jiang Xia spat out a mouthful of flames. The demon clouds melted in the flames like cotton threads, but the demon clouds in front of Xiao Hua covered his head. At the same time, Ao Jing's voice sounded lazily again. You still want to escape and control the dragon boat at this time? Do you think it's possible? To shoot a man, shoot the horse first. To catch bandits, catch the leader first. Just when Xiao Hua was in a desperate situation, he suddenly stood up and chanted. His whole body flashed with a pale golden brilliance, and his whole body expanded rapidly. The power of the stars and the moon poured in like a waterfall. The seemingly tough demon clouds were even more fragile than spider silk and collapsed under the Transcendent's golden body. Not only that, but with Xiao Hua's voice, he suddenly turned around and rushed toward Ao Jing. Ao Jing was shocked. He had already heard Xiao Hua's voice transmission to Jiang Xia through the demon array of the dragon boat. He thought that Xiao Hua and Jiang Xia were going to rush out to find Jiang Tian. He really didn't expect Xiao Hua to make a feint. However, in addition to being surprised, a grim smile appeared on his face. He waved his right dragon claw slightly, and in the space hundreds of feet between him and Xiao Hua, layers of demon clouds appeared little by little like frozen ice. The demon clouds were not only as sharp as swords, but also as hard as rocks, indestructible. Xiao Hua only flew a few feet before he was immediately blocked by the demon array of the dragon boat. Xiao Hua smiled coldly and reached out his hand. Rumble. The sound of thunder suddenly sounded, and then 2 lightning bolts were caught in Xiao Hua's hand. Kill! Xiao Hua roared, and the lightning bolts shot out like flying spears. Catcher! Layers of demon clouds were shattered by the lightning bolts. Before the demon clouds stirred and urged the power of the stars and the moon, Xiao Hua rubbed his hands together, and thunderbolts fell like a rainstorm. Not only did the demon clouds collapse, but even the area around Ao Jing was filled with lightning and thunder. Damn Dao cultivator, Ao Jing wasn't nervous at all. Draconic chi surged around his body, blocking the lightning. At the same time, thick pillars of starlight and moonlight appeared where the demonic clouds had just collapsed. These pillars of light surged violently towards Xiao Hua, clearly intending to kill him on the spot. Xiao Hua's originally flying figure stopped in midair, and his eyes flashed with contempt. He sneered and said, "Little loach, this Xiao will let you know the history of my human race. I'll let you know what it means to be at the end of your rope." While speaking, Xiao Hua waved left and right, and a golden light rushed out from his daoist robe. The soaring dragon shears turned into a golden dragon, and with a casual cut of the dragon's tail, the pillars of light from the stars and the moon were neatly cut into 2. And Xiao Hua's figure flew dozens of feet away at this moment. Quick, protect the prince. Ao Xian roared and threw herself in front of Xiao Hua. The long spear in her hand danced and stabbed toward Xiao Hua's chest. The long spear was like a shooting star. The demon chi around Ao Xian surged, and the power of the stars and the moon overflowed from the tip of the spear. Wherever the long spear passed, cracks in the void uncontrollably appeared. Chapter 3972. The North Sea Dragon Palace is nothing more than this. Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the tip of the spear piercing his chest. His arms lifted like an ape, and the wishful steel staff appeared in his hand. Grow, grow, grow. With Xiao Hua's roar, the wishful steel staff turned into 100 feet long, and a gust of wind blew between it. Boom! It hit the long spear, and the long spear immediately flew diagonally under Xiao Hua's great force. What was even more bullying was that Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff continued to grow, and it fell towards Ao Xian's right shoulder. Ao Xian was shocked, and her dragon tail swayed quickly, trying to block Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff. Seeing this, Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff simply gave up on Ao Xian's arm. Boom! There was a loud noise, and several scales fell with the roar. Ao Xian's dragon body was actually hit by Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff. Just as Ao Xian's figure was sent flying, Xiao Hua's figure once again rushed forward several tens of zhong. Beside him, a golden-armored dragon general wielded a pair of purple golden hammers and smashed them down like heavenly thunder. The space several tens of zhong below the purple golden hammers was covered, and a kind of suffocating aura was emitted from the purple golden hammers. Attack! Xiao Hua shouted loudly. The seal of turning the sea rushed out of the space, but the coiling dragon mouth seal blocked the purple golden hammer with lightning speed. Layers of strong wind were generated from the collision between the magic tool and the demonic tool. The nearby demonic beasts were all blown up by this strong wind. Hundreds of demonic beasts were blown back by at least several hundred feet. Taking advantage of this gap, Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff swept across and hit the dragon general's waist. With a crisp sound, the tough golden armor was smashed into pieces, and the dragon general's waist also collapsed. The dragon general's figure flew along with the wishful steel staff, and fell on the deck in a sorry state compared to Ao Xian. Xiao Hua's golden body did not stop at all, and with the wishful steel staff, he was already close to Ao Jing. Because of the two dragon generals, there were already 5 to 6 dragon generals in front of Xiao Jing. Not only were these dragon generals holding weapons and demonic artifacts, their bodies were also connected with the demonic array. A mountain-like barrier appeared in front of Xiao Hua, enveloping the surroundings several hundred feet. Xiao Hua sneered and a rumbling sound came from his body. The 5-colored sword light uncontrollably emitted from the golden body, and then the unmatched sword intent of heaven and earth appeared from Xiao Hua's hand along with 9 sword lights. Open! Xiao Hua shouted angrily. The sword lights condensed into one and directly slashed at the barrier that was connected to the dragon boat. Whoosh! Like the autumn wind sweeping through fallen leaves, the barrier was split in half by the sword energy. The dragon armor of the 5 or 6 dragon generals fell to the ground, and their demon treasures and weapons were split in half. His figure flew up along with the sword light. You. Ao Jing saw such a familiar sword light. How could he not know the origin of Xiao Hua? Fear immediately appeared in his heart, but before he could finish his words, Xiao Hua's figure flashed and his huge body appeared again in front of Ao Jing. Not good. All the Yarrow and dragon generals turned pale with fright. When Xiao Hua turned around to capture the king, Ao Jing and several other dragon generals tried to stop Xiao Hua, but under Xiao Hua's tiger-like attacks, they instantly collapsed. Xiao Hua urged his divine ability, and like a hot knife through butter, he attacked in front of Ao Jing in the blink of an eye. At this time, how could the generals stop him? Killing one person in 10 steps, the heroic spirit of 1,000 miles without leaving a single trace. Far away, Jiang Xia was also intoxicated. Don't hurt my master. All the dragon generals had no time to check their injuries and roared and wanted to rush again. At this time, Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff was like a heavenly pillar, smashing towards Ao Jing's forehead. Ha ha ha. Ao Jing laughed. Ignorant human, the son of my North Sea Dragon Palace is actually someone you can kill? As he spoke, dragon chi surged from Ao Jing's golden armor, and an earth-yellow dragon pendant flew out. The dragon chi within the dragon pendant, which could not be blocked by anything, turned into a dragon and rushed out. All the dragon generals trembled, and all the demons found it hard to resist this dragon's might. They prostrated themselves on the ground. This is the power of the North Sea Dragon Palace's Dragon King. Roar! Beyond everyone's expectations, a loud dragon roar came out from Xiao Hua's body, and an even more vigorous dragon body flew out. This dragon body was not afraid of the dragon chi of the dragon soul at all. It opened its mouth and swallowed the dragon into its mouth, then quickly turned in mid-air and disappeared into Xiao Hua's body. This. Ao Jing was stunned. Since the dragon was gone, the dragon's power left behind by the giant dragon suppressed him so much that he could not even raise his head. How could he still have the will to fight Xiao Hua? Give me your life. Xiao Hua sneered again, and the wishful steel staff fell like a mountain. Boom! It hit the dragon pendant that suddenly grew. Catcher! The dragon pendant made a crisp sound, and the dragon pendant that was personally refined by the Dragon King of the North Sea Dragon Palace was actually shattered by Xiao Hua. Woo! After the wind, Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff fell in front of Ao Jing's forehead. Ao Jing's face was ashen, and his whole dragon body flashed with golden light. A huge force rushed over like a wave, wanting to fight to the death with Xiao Hua. The dragon tail was like a pair of scissors, sweeping Xiao Hua's waist in a few breaths. Boom! Xiao Hua's golden body collapsed more than a dozen feet, but Xiao Hua took advantage of Ao Jing's attack to use his divine sense like a hammer to cover Ao Jing within 100 feet. Moreover, his divine sense rapidly contracted. No matter how Ao Jing struggled, he couldn't escape from Xiao Hua's hands. Save the prince! Ao Xian and the other dragon generals were shocked when they saw Ao Jing fall into Xiao Hua's hands, and they were ready to rush over. Alas! Xiao Hua sighed slightly in his heart, but he still clapped his hands, and the hand of Yuanying was displayed. He firmly grasped Ao Jing's dragon body and shouted, "Ao Jing is in the hands of this Xiao, who dares to come over?" This. Ao Xian and the other dragon generals stopped in midair, and no one dared to take half a step forward. Daoist Master Xiao. Jiang Xia was really overjoyed, but in a moment, Xiao Hua was actually able to catch the head of the dragon boat, which was an unexpected surprise. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua looked at Jiang Xia's figure flying over and hurriedly shouted, "Second elder, run." Ah! Why? Jiang Xia was somewhat incomprehensible. At this time, a cold voice sounded over the dragon boat, "Because the one Xiao Hua captured is not this king." What? Jiang Xia's brain was really not enough. She looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief, and then looked at Ao Jing, who was caught by Xiao Hua's Yuanying hand. Even Ao Xian and the other dragon generals were stunned on the spot. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and grabbed with his big hand. With a crackling sound, the brilliance around Ao Jing's body seemed to be cut into pieces, and a dragon general who was also of the dragon race but looked completely different appeared in midair. It was Ao Ju, who they had never seen before. Daoist Xiao, Daoist Xiao. Ao Jing's voice shook all around. This king really didn't expect that in the Yazi auction house. It was always you who was against this king. But, how do you know that the one you captured is not this king's real body? Xiao Hua did not let go of Ao Ju, and only replied indifferently, "This Xiao has met you before, how can Ao Ju compare to your strength? However, in this Xiao's opinion, your courage is even smaller than a rabbit. Your strength surpasses this Xiao's, so why don't you fight with this Xiao? Haha, why should this king fight with a lowly human like you? This king only needs to drive this dragon boat to the North Sea Dragon Palace, and it will be a great merit. Don't you want this loyal Ao Ju to live?" Xiao Hua's big hand tightened, and several bloody marks appeared on the surface of Ao Ju's body. "Ao Ju." Ao Jing's voice was still indifferent. "What do you think this king should do?" Ao Ju was like a little loach in the hands of Xiao Hua's Yuanying. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free. When he heard Ao Jing's question, he simply gave up struggling and said loudly, "From the moment this general obtained the 1,000 illusion pearl, this general had already thought of today's outcome. Since this general is under the king's command, it is natural for this general to sacrifice himself for the king. The king should prioritize the affairs of the Dragon Palace. There is no need to care about this general's life and death. Xiao Hua, do you understand?" Ao Jing said proudly, "Let's not talk about the fact that you captured Ao Ju. Even if you really captured me, I would definitely not submit. I would definitely kill all of you remnants of the Grotto Heaven River on the dragon boat. Generals, listen to my order. Kill." Yes. Ao Xian and the other dragon generals received the order and bowed. Then, the clouds around their bodies surged, revealing their dragon bodies one by one. The entire dragon boat began to swirl and swirl. The dragon race was a higher race of the demon race. When the dragon's might appeared, all the demons trembled and rushed toward the cabin without hesitation. This kind of battle was not something they could participate in. "Fine, since you want to die, this Xiao will fulfill your wish." Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a fierce light. His Yuanying's hand moved, and the sound of blood flowing was heard in the air. "Ao Ao." Ao Ju's heart-wrenching scream also resounded through the dragon boat. Ju was willing to die, but the pain before death was definitely beyond his imagination. Not to mention, under Xiao Hua's soul technique, his soul was struggling and suffering. Kill! Xian and the other dragon generals roared. Dozens of dragon eyes were filled with blood vessels as they roared and pounced toward Xiao Hua. Jiang Xia also roared angrily. Her dragon body transformed, and beautiful dragon patterns appeared around her body. The dragon patterns released a silver brilliance, and each ray of brilliance was like a sharp sword that pierced through the sky and pierced toward the dragons. Clang, clang. Xian and the other dragon generals were surrounded by demonic clouds. It was the demonic array that was formed by the dragon generals controlling the dragon boat. The flying sword made a loud sound when it hit the demonic clouds, but when it stabbed Xian and the other dragon generals, it was already weak. It only forced Xian and the other dragon generals to retreat, but it could not hurt them. Roar! When Jiang Xia saw this, she was a little embarrassed and angry. She roared loudly and ignored the injuries on her dragon body. Her entire dragon body moved, and the dragon horns on her dragon head flashed with a silver color. This silver color was like a ball that swam around Jiang Xia's body. In just a few breaths, Jiang Xia's entire body was covered by this silver color. Jiang Xia's dragon body pounced toward Xian and the other dragon generals. The demonic array of the dragon boat in the air was destroyed, and Xian and the other dragon generals were sent flying by Jiang Xia. Chapter 3973. Xiao Hua looked around, then looked at Ju, who was unafraid of death. He smiled coldly, grabbed Ju's dragon body with one hand, and pressed it deep into the deck. His other hand landed on Ju's dragon tail, and his fingers shone with a pale golden light. He exerted a little force, and Ju's tough dragon skin was torn apart by Xiao Hua. As dragon blood flowed out, Xiao Hua pinched the dragon tendon in Ju's body and said coldly, "People often say that dragon tendons are tough. I'm lacking a dragon tendon to bind my waist, so I'll use your dragon tendon." You! Jing's voice was filled with rare anger, and he shouted angrily, "You can kill the dragon general of my North Sea Dragon Palace, but if you insult him, my North Sea Dragon Palace will be irreconcilable with you." Xiao Hua didn't care about Jing's words. He fiddled with Ju's dragon tendon again, and lifted a layer of dragon skin with his fingers. He said again, "It's said that the dragon skin of the dragon race is invulnerable to water and fire. It should be quite impressive for me to make a daoist robe with it, right? Damn it." Jing's voice was furious. "Xiao Hua, if you dare to make a move, I'll never forgive you." Xiao Hua said coldly, "I didn't intend to beg for mercy. I've been standing here for a long time, but what about you? The dignified second prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace is actually hiding in the demon formation of the dragon boat, and saying these useless things. You don't even dare to come out when I skin your dragon general. Tell me, who will dare to serve you in the future? What? Someone actually dares to touch the dragon general of my North Sea Dragon Palace and skin him?" Suddenly, a faint voice came from the edge of the dragon boat. "I've lived for hundreds of thousands of years, but I've never seen such an arrogant human cultivator." Oh! This voice was very soft, but in Xiao Hua's ears, it was like a sudden clap of thunder. He raised his gaze and looked past Jiang Xia, who was fighting fiercely, past Xian and the other dragons who were rolling about, and saw a small dragon whose body was flickering with a jewel-colored light. The small dragon's scales were only the size of a fist, and there were faint dragon runes flashing on each scale. The two dragon shapes on the raised dragon head were actually white. This little dragon floated in the air. It didn't exude any arrogant dragon might, but its icy cold eyes swept over the dragon boat. The generals fighting couldn't help but restrain their auras, afraid that it would see them. "Hiss, this is Jian. Why is he on the dragon boat?" Jiang Xia sucked in a breath of cold air and transmitted her voice in surprise. Although Jiang Xia didn't say who Jian was, from her tone, Xiao Hua already knew that he had met an enemy. Moreover, he also knew that he probably wouldn't have the chance to capture the leader first. Xiao Hua naturally would not really attack Ju. Upon seeing Jian appear, he did not hesitate to put Ju into the cosmic bracelet. Xiao Hua's body had just moved when a huge force emerged from beneath him, forcefully restraining his body. Of course, it was only for a few breaths before the dark gold light around Xiao Hua's body flashed, shattering the restraints. Unfortunately, it was also during this short delay that Ao Ju, who was captured beneath him, suddenly twisted his dragon body and actually escaped from Xiao Hua's control, flying towards Ao Jian in an abnormally sorry state. Xiao Hua was shocked, but he didn't dare to chase after Ao Ju's flying dragon body. Ao Jian didn't seem to see Ao Ju, and it was as if he didn't do anything. He just flew over slowly as if he was playing. He glanced at Xiao Hua and asked indifferently, "You are a human cultivator. Where did you get the dragon aura of my dragon clan? What was that huge dragon that appeared for a moment?" The calmer Ao Jian was, the less dragon power appeared around him. Xiao Hua was even more shocked. He knew that there would be some experts on the dragon boat, but he definitely didn't expect that he would be the only one facing them at this time. Where was the dragon clan of the heavenly abode river? Run! Jiang Xia saw Ao Jian appear and lost the confidence to kill Ao Xian and the others. She hurriedly shouted, "Only the great elder can stop Ao Jian. We are no match for him. Since you forced me to come out, do you still want to leave now?" Ao Jian's tone was still indifferent. His figure stopped in midair, slightly opened his mouth, and a dragon's breath came out of his mouth. Xiao Hua only felt that the entire space seemed to be frozen, and an indescribable dragon's force squeezed towards him from all direction. Xiao Hua sighed softly. His divine consciousness condensed into a hammer and struck out like a meteor. Rumble. Formless collisions continuously occurred within a radius of 1,000 feet. That frozen space was actually destroyed by Xiao Hua. Oh! What kind of Daoist spell is this? It's so powerful. Ao Jian was a little surprised. Why wasn't such a Daoist cultivator captured in the Penglai immortal realm? Could it be that the immortal palace's inspectors are all blind? Roar! Ao Jian finally let out a low roar. That earth-shattering dragon's might rushed out like a wave and covered Xiao Hua. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Xiao Hua sneered. The clouds around his body surged. Xiao Hua urged the dragon statue to fly out of his body with its fangs bared and claws brandished. The same unparalleled dragon might was released and collided with Ao Jian's dragon might. The strong airwaves were like the pressure of two Daoist cultivators colliding, flying in all directions. Ao Jian's ice-cold eyes flashed with surprise. He shouted, "No, no. You're not my real dragon, and not the dragon blood Dharma body, but where did the true dragon's breath come from?" Unfortunately, how could Xiao Hua be long-winded with him? Xiao Hua urged the dragon's vein and pounced towards Ao Jian with a roar. At the same time, at the top of Xiao Hua's head, four-colored true qi spewed out. The Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua's figure appeared from the true qi. Xiao Hua raised his hand, and 9 sword lights gathered again. A shocking sword quickly formed. "Hey! You're actually a Confucian cultivator?" Ao Jian's dragon body collided with dragon vein Xiao Hua, causing dragon vein Xiao Hua's body to scatter. Seeing Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua come out, he actually cried out in surprise, and this Confucian cultivator's cultivation is also so high. It's really strange. Not only that, I'll let you see this Xiao's means. Xiao Hua faced a strong opponent like Ao Jian and narrowed his eyes. The wishful staff in his hand danced again. At the same time, he rushed towards Ao Jian and secretly released the green-robed Xiao Hua. "Unfortunately, with just these means, you're still not my opponent." Ao Jian's dragon tail rolled, and a strange whirlwind swept past, sending Xiao Hua flying. He sneered and said, "If your dragon form condensed into a solid body, you might have the strength to fight with this old man. Daoist Xiao, run." Jiang Xia's body flashed with sword lights as she rushed over and shouted. The dragon claw under Ao Jian waved, and a cold light appeared out of thin air, slashing at Jiang Xia's dragon tail. At the same time, the sword lights scattered, and a large piece of flesh fell with dragon scales. Jiang Xia was in so much pain that she almost rolled in the air. "This old man also saw your dragon form. That's all there is to it. Human, prepare to die." Ao Jian shouted coldly again. He raised his 2 dragon claws, and 8 pillars of dragon qi rushed out. 4 of them fell on Xiao Hua's body, almost piercing through his dragon body. The other 4 dragon chi were like huge dragon claws that wanted to capture Xiao Hua. Boom, Shua, the Ting Jiao shears and the seal of turning the sea suddenly attacked. The golden light flashed, and the dragon chi was split in half. The other dragon chi was also defeated by the seal of turning the sea. Oh! Ao Jian was stunned. At this time, Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff had already fallen and hit one of the dragon chi. This dragon chi was also defeated. Boom! The last dragon chi hit Xiao Hua's body, and Xiao Hua flew back 100 feet. Although the golden body was defeated, it did not collapse. Eat this Xiao's sword. At this time, the Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua's flying sword technique had finished accumulating power. The long sword in his hand waved, and the soaring sword intent lit up the sky. Ao Jian did not dare to be negligent. He opened his mouth, and a fist-sized dragon pearl flew out to meet the flying sword. Rumble. Suddenly, a layer of thunder strangely appeared out of thin air. This thunder had the power of heaven and earth compared to the flying sword, and it blasted towards Ao Jian. This. In the face of the thunder technique displayed by the invisible nascent soul, even someone as strong as Ao Jian was shocked. He did not dare to meet it head-on. He could only retreat quickly, temporarily avoiding the sharp edge. At the same time, his dragon pearl turned into a huge curtain, and a ray of light gushed out from it, ready to resist Xiao Hua's strongest blow. Boom! Another loud sound came from the sky, and a layer of thunder light was seen, like hot water being poured on snow. The demon array on the dragon boat flashed with demon clouds and thin threads, melting rapidly, and the power of the stars and moon turned into nothingness. Holding the world in my hand, hiding a ravine in my chest, my heart is like my sword, the sword will cut down the group of demons. As the Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua sang, the flying sword that was chopping towards Ao Jian suddenly rose up. The demon array that was about to collapse, as the sword light cut into it, woo-woo. It let out a trembling sound. Shua. A crack of several hundred feet in size appeared on the dragon boat, and the seawater at the bottom of the North Sea immediately poured into the dragon boat. Moreover, under the huge water pressure, the crack of several hundred feet in size cracked in all directions. Woo! The trembling sound of the dragon boat's demon array became louder and louder. The entire dragon boat suddenly began to shake violently, and even began to sway. The seawater that fell into the dragon boat also let out ear-piercing squeaking sounds, and the ochre-red bubbles corroded the deck of the dragon boat, creating small holes. Damn it! Ao Jian looked at the light in front of him with extreme embarrassment. He really did not expect that Xiao Hua did not have the heart to fight with him. Everything was a feint. Ao Jian could not help but curse. Looking at Xiao Hua again, he had already put away the soaring dragon scissors and the seal of turning the sea. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua also struggled to fly back to Xiao Hua's body. In front of a powerful enemy like Ao Jian, Xiao Hua, who did not have a real dragon body, could not take the initiative. Just as Ao Jian was cursing, Xiao Hua made a gesture, and the whole Transcendent's golden body flashed with a dark golden luster, setting off a cluster of water waves, and his figure disappeared in an instant. Xiao Hua wanted to take advantage of the current to enter the dragon boat and use the water escape technique to escape. Chapter 3974. From the moment Xiao Hua started fighting with Ao Jian, only a few breaths of time had passed. Jiang Xia, who had been injured by Ao Jian, had only rolled a few times in the air and had just landed on the deck. At this time, seeing Xiao Hua's decisiveness, Jiang Xia was a little hesitant. She couldn't compare to Xiao Hua. Not only were there sea tribe members of the Heavenly Abode River on the dragon boat, but there was also the Great Elder under the deck. How could she abandon them and escape? However, she was very clear about Ao Jian's strength. Apart from Jiang Tian who could resist him, even she and Xiao Hua were not his opponents. If she didn't escape with Xiao Hua now, she was afraid that she wouldn't have any chance. Human, stay here. Ao Jian sneered, and the dragon ball disappeared into thin air. The next moment, a dual-colored light appeared outside the water light. Although Xiao Hua's water escape technique was powerful, in front of the dragon ball that was born from water essence, it was still half a level lower. Boom! With a loud bang, Xiao Hua's figure was revealed in front of the Dragon Pearl's multicolored light, and that multicolored light was torn into strands. Ao Gen's Dragon Pearl also had traces of cracks on it. Ao! Ao Gen wailed in pain. With a shake of his dragon body, his figure also disappeared. His water escape technique was innate. Xiao Hua was blocked by the Dragon Ball, so how could he escape? The Dragon Ball, under Ao Gen's control, turned into a net of light and merged with the demon formation. The dragon chi above the light was like a sharp knife, but this light was also corroded by the strange seawater. However, Ao Gen stood in front of Xiao Hua. The entire dragon boat began to rotate, and the seawater raged. He only said coldly, "Human, go to hell." As he spoke, a dragon scale came out from between Ao Gen's eyebrows and disappeared into the void in a flash. Then, he saw Xiao Hua's expression, and the space around him began to boil. A huge golden rock with unparalleled power smashed towards Xiao Hua. Boom! The huge rock formed from the dragon scale was like Ao Gen's all-out attack. Xiao Hua couldn't resist at all. The huge rock hit Xiao Hua's chest. Xiao Hua's body was already extremely tough, and even the sage of literature could not destroy it. However, under this huge rock, his body caved in several inches, and Xiao Hua could only take advantage of the momentum to retreat. Ao Gen's face was filled with surprise. He never thought that this human's body would be even tougher than his own dragon body. His figure danced again, and a faint halo appeared on his sharp dragon horns. Cracks appeared in the void. Looking at the ferocious look in Ao Gen's eyes, it seemed that he was preparing to use all kinds of methods to kill Xiao Hua here. Facing Ao Gen's deadly attack, Xiao Hua immediately waved his left arm. Layers of devil chi rapidly seeped out of his blood vessels. Xiao Hua wanted to raise his devil blade and fight to the death with Ao Gen. Boom! Just when Xiao Hua was about to reveal his devil body, a huge rumbling sound came from outside the dragon boat. The dragon boat started to spin crazily. Outside the dragon boat, the originally calm seabed gave birth to a huge storm. It was as if an invisible hand was crazily stirring up the entire North Sea. However, even though the entire dragon boat was shaking and the entire demon formation was collapsing, only Ao Gen's dragon body did not change at all. Xiao Hua's devil blade also gradually revealed its ferocity. Roar! Suddenly, a dragon roar condensed in the void again. A pea-like multicolored light appeared, passed by Xiao Hua out of thin air, and met the murderous dragon horn. Dragon horn! Great Elder! Although this multicolored light was small, once it appeared, the ferocious momentum that wanted to kill Xiao Hua was blocked by this multicolored light. Within the multicolored light, a dragon horn as straight as Ao Gen's appeared. Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he couldn't help but exclaim. The dragon horns of the two dragon experts hadn't touched yet, but with a sizzling sound, they collided with each other and produced electric sparks. As soon as the electric sparks appeared, a dazzling sword light appeared on the side of the two dragons again, and fiercely slashed at Ao Gen. Boom! The two dragon horns inevitably collided with each other, and the shocking sword light also slashed Ao Gen's body. The impact was so great that the deck of the dragon boat and the already collapsed demon formation cracked. Ao Gen stood in the air in a very sorry state, and a deep sword mark appeared on his scales. Opposite Ao Gen, a red dragon similar to Ao Gen tumbled a few times in the air and came to a stop with some difficulty. Great Elder! Jiang Xia urged her figure in the air, landed next to the red dragon, and called out, "What's the situation?" The red dragon was the great elder of the Heavenly Cave River, Jiang Tian. He glanced at Jiang Xia and said anxiously, "Jiang Zhen and the others are fighting with the sea generals of the North Sea Dragon Palace for control of the dragon boat. Quickly go and help. Now that the dragon boat has encountered a rare scarlet storm, it's a good opportunity for us to die together with the North Sea Dragon Palace. We must not let the dragon boat escape from the scarlet storm." Yes. Hearing this, Jiang Xia's dragon eyes were filled with determination, and she urged her figure to fly down the deck. In just a moment, Ao Xian and the other dragon generals had already rushed down the deck. Obviously, the battle there was more tense than Ao Jing thought. Jiang Xia's participation would definitely make the battle more chaotic. Seeing Jiang Xia leave, Jiang Tian turned his head and glanced at Ao Jian, but ignored him. Instead, he looked at Xiao Hua, and the surprise in his eyes was self-evident. He said, "Zhenren Xiao, you really exceeded this old man's expectations. This time, I'm afraid that the Heavenly Cave River will owe you a lot again. This old man doesn't know how to explain it to you." Xiao Hua looked at Jiang Tian with mixed feelings. He knew that in Jiang Tian's eyes, his life could not be compared to the revenge of the Heavenly Cave River. Even his own life was in their calculations. If he was not strong enough, he would have been sacrificed long ago. However, even though he was scheming, he had also made it clear that all he needed to do was to be a pawn that Ao Jing would not expect. However, Ao Jing was too cunning. He had tricked Dong Tianjiang time and time again. Even though Ao Jing would not expect him to be a pawn, this effect was meaningless on the dragon boat. "No matter how strong I am, I can't compare to the great elder," Xiao Hua said indifferently. "Today, I'd better think about how to escape from Ao Jian and escape from the dragon boat." "Why do you want to escape?" Jiang Tian looked coldly at Ao Jian and said, "If you want to escape, you may be killed by Ao Jian. Only if you want to kill Ao Jian can you have a chance to escape. However, enlightened master, no matter what, the Heavenly Cave River owes you again. If we all leave the North Sea alive, the Heavenly Cave River will promise you one thing." How could Xiao Hua not understand what Jiang Tian was trying to do? Wasn't he trying to make Xiao Hua go all out to kill Ao Jian? Xiao Hua replied indifferently, "Yes, this Xiao understands." "Jiang Tian," Ao Jian said proudly, "you and I haven't seen each other for 500 years, right? I didn't expect your strength to not improve at all. I really don't know how you cultivate these days. Maybe you were my opponent 500 years ago, but now? In this old man's eyes, you're not even comparable to this little human kid." Ao Jian. Jiang Tian did not answer Ao Jian's question. Instead, he asked, "Why are you on the dragon boat? Could it be that you already knew that the Heavenly Cave River was going to hijack the dragon boat?" "Of course. If not, why would this old man hide on the dragon boat?" Ao Jian answered firmly. Jiang Tian's face was ashen. He muttered, "How? How is that possible? Could it be that after Ao Xian captured Jiang Hong, the North Sea Dragon Palace, sent the dragon boat with the intention of destroying the Heavenly Cave River?" "Of course." Ao Jian smiled. "Jiang Tian, after all your schemes, you still fell into the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace. From today onwards, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will be at peace, Immerse, Grand Elder." Xiao Hua saw that Jiang Tian had lost all his will to fight, and that his entire body was drained of energy. He hurriedly snorted and said, "Don't listen to this old loach's nonsense. If the North Sea Dragon Palace had already predicted this, would you be facing Ao Jian?" Jiang Tian was stunned. His expression quickly changed. He raised his head and laughed. That's right. I'm in the middle of this, so I really don't understand. Ao Jian, the North Sea Dragon Palace sent the dragon boat before Jiang Hong was captured. How could the North Sea Dragon Palace know that the Heavenly Cave River was going to attack the dragon boat? Haha, that's true. Jiang Tian admitted without hesitation. He pointed his dragon claw at Jiang Tian and said, "Jiang Tian, you've been scheming too much in the past few hundred years. You've become narrow-minded. If you're narrow-minded, how can you have a bigger picture? You're no match for me now, and you'll never be my match in the future. To tell you the truth, even if I let you go today, you'll definitely die in my hands if you meet me again in the future." Xiao Hua sighed in his heart, knowing that what Ao Jian said was not false. But at this time, how could he dare to let Jiang Tian recognize his fatal weakness? He said coldly, "Old Loach, don't bewitch him anymore. It's impossible for First Elder to fall for your low-level trick. In my opinion, you came to Yu Ling Bay with the dragon boat by chance. It's just a coincidence that you ran into this." Ao Jian's fierce gaze swept across Xiao Hua. He replied indifferently, "You're right, kid. I didn't do it on purpose. I came back from overseas training and didn't have time to return to the Dragon Palace. I was already exhausted. When I saw the dragon boat leaving, I simply hid under the boat to rest." Who would have thought that I would run into the remnants of the Heavenly Cave River? Your Heavenly Cave River's luck has come to an end. Heaven wants to destroy your Heavenly Cave River. Before Aogen could finish his words, he heard a sound that sounded like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves outside the dragon boat. Streaks of crimson sea waves, which were the patterns of the kaleidoscope, surged toward the dragon boat. The dragon boat finally couldn't withstand the tremendous force. It spun at an extremely fast speed and was swept into the depths of the sea. Boom! Boom! With a series of collisions, the demonic clouds in the dragon boat's demonic array slid down. Most of the weaker members of the oceanic tribe were tumbling along with the dragon boat. The battle cries gradually disappeared. Chapter 3975. Kill. Aogen's dragon eyes were filled with ferocity. As his dragon body twisted, he released his dragon aura and attacked Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian shouted, "Spiritual Master Xiao, help me. You and I will kill this monster today." "All right." Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He waved his hands, and the lightning rolled up like a thunderbolt, landing on Aogen's dragon body like a sharp sword. The lightning technique taught by Do Shanjun was indeed powerful. Although Xiao Hua had not mastered it yet, the lightning was the same as the technique Xiao Hua used before. It scattered the dragon aura around Aogen's body, and deep marks appeared on Aogen's scales. It was even more powerful than the magic treasures of ordinary Daoist cultivators. Chemph. Aogen waved his dragon claws and fought with Jiang Tian. At the same time, he snorted coldly. The somewhat broken dragon pearl turned into a small dragon and also danced, fighting with Xiao Hua's lightning. The lightning was like a shadow, and the dragon aura was like a form. The incoming seawater and reefs were all turned into nothingness by the lightning and dragon aura. Even the dragon boat's restriction was torn to pieces by this murderous aura. After fighting like this for half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong. Although it was easy for Xiao Hua to activate the lightning, it consumed his magic power after all. In the space of a few hundred feet around Aogen, his magic power gradually showed signs of being difficult to mobilize. Moreover, although the power of the lightning was great, in the face of an old dragon like Aogen who had cultivated for who knows how long, the power was still not enough. Looking at the fight between Jiang Tian and Aogen, most of them relied on their physical bodies. Every move saw flesh, and their claws saw blood. Ordinary demonic power was rarely used. "I understand." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and thought to himself, although the demon race tempers the power of the stars and moon, their physical bodies are really tough. Ordinary demonic techniques can't break their physical bodies. Instead of wasting time to cultivate demonic techniques, it's better to directly fight with their physical bodies. Moreover, the innate magical power of the demon race lies in their physical bodies. Only when they return to their original bodies, they are the strongest. No matter how the human cultivator's physical body is tempered, it can't be compared to the innate physical body of the demon race. The human race can only rely on magic, Confucian or Buddhist techniques to compete with the demon race. However, these acquired abilities are still slightly inferior to the innate abilities of the demon race. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua withdrew his lightning technique and brandished his fists. He actually used the Big Dipper God Fist in midair to fight with the little dragon transformed from the dragon pearl. Sure enough, as Xiao Hua expected, although the little dragon transformed from the dragon pearl was powerful and also contained a wisp of Aogen's primordial spirit, Xiao Hua's Big Dipper God Fist was not much inferior to the thunder technique. The dragon pearl had already been damaged by Xiao Hua's attack. Now that it was fighting with Xiao Hua, it only took a moment for Xiao Hua's fist to land on the little dragon's body. The little dragon howled in grief, and Aogen's figure also twitched. The little dragon's body flashed with multicolored light and turned back into the dragon pearl. Boom! The dragon pearl had just appeared when Xiao Hua's divine sense hammer fell again, smashing the dragon pearl in half. Damn it! Aogen cursed. He opened his mouth and spat out a dragon breath, collecting the two halves of the dragon pearl. The dragon claw streaked across the air and landed on Xiao Hua's chest. Fight! Xiao Hua did not seem to be afraid. His right hand clenched into a fist, and like a meteor, he met the dragon claw head-on. Boom! Xiao Hua's figure retreated rapidly, and Ao Jian also retreated several feet. Roar! Without waiting for Ao Jian's figure to stabilize in midair, Jiang Tian's dragon body flashed, and the seawater nearby turned into a whirlpool. Jiang Tian passed through the whirlpool, and the dragon horn pierced towards Ao Jian's abdomen. Ao Jian's dragon body shook with all his strength, and he barely managed to stretch out his hind claw. Pa! A loud sound rang out, and the multicolored light on the dragon horn was extinguished. However, Ao Jian's dragon claw was also deeply pierced by the dragon horn, and dragon blood flowed out. Whoosh! Ao Jian did not have time to cry out in pain. The water beside him swayed, and Xiao Hua's mountain-like fist had already arrived. His movements were even stranger than Jiang Tian's, and before Ao Jian could react, it had already hit the dragon scales on Ao Jian's body. Pa! The sound of dragon scales shattering rang out, and Ao Jian's protective dragon aura was scattered, and the dragon scales shattered into several pieces. Roar! Ao Jian was furious. He opened his mouth, and a dragon roar that Xiao Hua could not imagine came out of his mouth. Ripples visible to the naked eye stretched out in midair, and the seawater in the surrounding 100 feet turned into nothingness. The ripples swept through Xiao Hua's golden body, and the brilliance of the golden body quickly spread out in the cave, and some places had already begun to collapse. A feeling of the sky and earth spinning appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. Before Xiao Hua could activate his cultivation method to protect himself, pa pa pa, a series of sounds rang out around the dragon boat. The monster race on the dragon boat had been seriously injured by Ao Jian's roar. Woo woo. The sound that sounded like a ghost's cry suddenly became low, and as the sound became lower, an indescribable palpitation emerged from the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. The feeling of the sky and earth spinning suddenly intensified, and one after another, strange ripples appeared outside of his Niwn palace, attacking the innate divine seal crazily. At the same time, Jiang Tian laughed crazily. Ha ha ha, Ao Jian, don't forget, this is the scarlet explosion that can tear apart a dragon's body. Attacking us like this, are you tired of living? Since you don't want to live anymore, then this old man will do as you wish, and let this old man send you on your way. After he finished speaking, Jiang Tian also roared, and the same pattern appeared in midair, rushing towards the dragon boat's monster array. It seemed like he was really going to perish together with Ao Jian. Boom! After the loud noise, the entire dragon boat suddenly fell silent. Hundreds of sparks appeared outside of Xiao Hua's Niwn palace, and waves of ripples fell on the innate divine seal like moths to a flame. Then, Xiao Hua felt a huge force falling from the sky, grabbing his huge Transcendence golden body and tearing it apart. His Transcendence golden body could not resist this force at all. You too can die now. Ao Jian's dragon body also began to roll, and his eyes flashed with desperation. With a hysterical roar, 2 golden lights flashed above his head, and 2 dragon horns broke out of his body, instantly landing in front of Xiao Hua and Jiang Tian. The blood vessels on the dragon horns were obvious, and the murderous hatred on the dragon horns was also obvious. Xiao Hua saw that he could not escape from Ao Jian's all-out attack, and his eyes flashed coldly. He hurriedly used the water escape technique to dodge, and at the same time, the hammer of spiritual will madly smashed at the broken part of the monster array. Moreover, with a loud bang, Xiao Hua's sword of heaven and earth also slashed at the monster array. Previously, Jiang Tian wanted to destroy the monster race on the dragon boat, but because the dragon race of the North Sea Dragon Palace died in the Crimson Explosion, Xiao Hua was unwilling to do so. Now, Xiao Hua was forced into a desperate situation by Ao Jian, and he had no choice but to use the power of the Crimson Explosion to see if he could survive this desperate situation. Boom! A huge roar sounded at the same time, and sword light and multicolored light appeared at the same time, almost blinding the monster race's eyes. At the same time, the dragon horn pierced into Xiao Hua's right armpit as he could not dodge, and it pierced deeply, only a few centimeters away from piercing through his body. Ah! Xiao Hua screamed in pain. The pain of the dragon horn piercing into his body was very strange, as if it had pierced deep into his heart, and he could not help but scream. In particular, the dragon horn did not stop, and it kept drilling into Xiao Hua's body, as if it would not stop until it killed Xiao Hua in one blow. At this moment, another huge force penetrated into the monster array from the torn part. Not only was the monster array completely torn apart, but even the dragon boat was also rapidly rumbling and trembling under this force. At the edge of the dragon boat, the hundreds of North Sea Dragon Palace sea generals were torn to pieces by this force, and their armor and other things could not resist at all, as if they were made of paper. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Ao Jian shouted 3 times, and the dragon horn also jumped 3 times, and then the dragon horn retreated. How could Xiao Hua let the dragon horn escape? He hurriedly used the heaven and earth in the sleeve technique to cover the dragon horn, and wanted to capture it. Unfortunately, the dragon horn had a spirit, and how could it be imprisoned by the heaven and earth in the sleeve technique? Xiao Hua's magic power had just touched the dragon horn, and the dragon horn had already disappeared from the void. Xiao Hua still wanted to chase, but at this moment, the power of heaven and earth rushed in from all directions, and the fist-sized bubble mixed with the arca-red mist completely enveloped Xiao Hua. Not only did Xiao Hua's golden body make a sizzling sound, even the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua, who had just made a contribution, hurriedly shouted, "Not good, fellow immortal, quickly save me." Seeing that the situation was so critical, Xiao Hua simply did not care about Ao Jian's life and death. He raised his hand and patted the top of his head, and a 4-colored Zhenqi rushed out, covering the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua in the distance. At the same time, he hurriedly shrank his figure, and prepared to use the water escape technique to escape. However, when the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua fell into his middle dantian with lingering fear, Xiao Hua's figure was still wandering around within 1,000 zhong of the dragon boat. The water escape technique did not seem to have taken effect, and Xiao Hua was simply unable to escape. How is this possible? Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised, and then looked at the sea generals being torn to pieces one by one, and the dragon boat being slowly dismantled. He could not help but be greatly alarmed. Could it be that this so-called scarlet explosion has also sealed the water escape technique? However, when Xiao Hua's gaze fell on his skin that was being burned by the bubbles, his eyes suddenly lit up, and then he did not hesitate to use the fire escape technique. Whoosh! Following the emergence of Xiao Hua's magic power, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared in midair. It turned out that the scarlet explosion was filled with fire elemental Zhenqi. No wonder the water escape technique could not be used. Although Xiao Hua used the fire escape technique, he could clearly see that the whole world was still smashing and spinning. When he used the fire escape technique, Xiao Hua was also unable to resist the force, as if a big hand wanted to pull him out. Although this force did not succeed, Xiao Hua's figure was not flying straight forward like before, and could only fly everywhere in the boundless North Sea like a headless fly. However, although Xiao Hua did not use any technique to escape, in the end, he still gradually distanced himself from the dragon boat, escaped Ao Jian's attack, and escaped through the flesh and blood of many sea tribes. Chapter 3976. Woo! After an unknown amount of time, a pillar of water shot up to the sky from the surface of the North Sea. Xiao Hua flew out from the bottom of the sea in an extremely sorry state. However, he was only stunned for a few breaths. The yuan qi of heaven and earth, which was even more chaotic than before, swept through the air with a huge pillar of wind. On the surface of Xiao Hua's body, strands of cracks appeared like a spider web. Xiao Hua was so frightened that he couldn't stay in the air and fell back into the sea. In the sky above the sea, the red clouds, the strong winds, and the huge waves that covered the entire sky seemed to want to strangle everything in the world. Damn it! Xiao Hua fell into the sea, trying his best to stabilize his body with the fire escape technique, and hurriedly thought, this scarlet storm is actually so powerful. No wonder even someone as strong as Ao Jing didn't dare to return to the Dragon Palace without the dragon boat. Those old Sea Clan members who stayed in Yuling Bay were probably still afraid of the Scarlet Storm, right? Now that the dragon boat was destroyed, the dragons of the Heavenly Abode River suffered great losses, but on the dragon boat, how many of the Sea Clan members of the North Sea Dragon Palace survived? I may have temporarily escaped from the dragon boat, but if I can't escape from the Scarlet Storm, I will eventually die in the North Sea. Could it be that the warning sign is this Scarlet Storm? Xiao Hua racked his brains to escape, and after several hours, he finally rushed out from the bottom of the sea, but this time he learned to be obedient. As soon as he flew out, he immediately used the wind escape technique, and his body was like a wisp of wind, drifting along with the raging sea wind. Although Xiao Hua was proficient in the wind escape technique, it was only at the elementary level, so he could only rely on the Scarlet Storm to fly. This Scarlet Storm was so strange that not only did it tear apart Xiao Hua's body, but it also tore apart his divine sense, soul consciousness, and so on. Even Xiao Hua's divine abilities such as Heaven's Eye were unable to be used in this Scarlet Storm. What was special was that even though Xiao Hua had shut off his 5 senses, he could still hear the sound of a battle between 2 armies. His Niwen palace was still filled with splendor. Under such a dangerous situation, Xiao Hua had no other way to escape other than drifting along with the scarlet explosion. There was only one thought in Xiao Hua's mind, and that was to pray that this scarlet explosion would end soon. For a cultivator like Xiao Hua who was at the lower 6th level of essence energy, this kind of thought was truly rarely seen. After all, this kind of cultivator was accustomed to seeing the might of heaven and earth, and was also accustomed to going against heaven and earth. Unknowingly, more than 3 days had passed. Xiao Hua felt somewhat exhausted, because he was constantly sensing the direction of the Scarlet Storm, and constantly changing the direction of the wind escape. Within the Scarlet Storm, the wind flow was unfathomable. Sometimes, the wind would flow in a single direction, while other times, multiple streams of air would tear each other apart. It did not seem to make any difference which direction one chose. In particular, the arca-red aura that corroded the body within the Scarlet Storm was not something that Confucian Jinqi and Dao Jinqi could deal with. Xiao Hua could only rely on the strength of his monster body to resist. Since he had reached this point, any struggle would be meaningless. Xiao Hua simply stopped struggling. He warned Heavenly Phoenix Xiao Hua a few words, then his mind hid in the space. While refining the dark breaking pill, he also comprehended the combination of the Crimson Infant technique and the Dao sect's cultivation method. He didn't believe that after being tempered by the fiend god's blood, his body couldn't defeat this crimson bow. After an unknown amount of time, Jade Archive Xiao Hua's heart suddenly stirred. An inexplicable fluctuation descended from the sky. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's figure swayed strangely, then bent in half like a stream of light. Within this stream of light, there were countless tiny Buddhas. In just a few breaths of time, these Buddhas withered and died many times like flowers blooming and withering. Then, under the gazes of these Buddhas, a small chiliocosm was born and extinguished. Namo Metria Buddha tilde Jade Archive Xiao Hua could not help but recite the name of Buddha. His figure gradually solidified, and the Buddhas in the light gradually disappeared. Immediately, Jade Archive Xiao Hua closed his eyes again, and only opened them after several hours. The first thing Jade Archive Xiao Hua did after opening his eyes was to raise his hand, and thousands of dark breaking pills fell into the air. Jade Archive Xiao Hua clenched his hand, and all of the dark breaking pills turned into medicinal juice. Haha, no wonder ordinary cultivators can't refine the pills they use to advance. They have to be refined by high-level cultivators before they can take them. I blindly tried to be brave, and thought that I could refine the dark breaking pill with my own strength, but Ai's Daojin Qi has not reached the true spirit severing stage, so how could I refine the real dark breaking pill? If fellow immortal body did not have a crucial enlightenment at a critical moment, how could I know the relationship between the physical body and the spirit severing stage? Daojin Qi, Confucian Jinqi, Buddhist Jinqi, and even Yao Jinqi's cultivation methods seem to have some similarities. Although they are not completely applicable, it is possible to learn from each other. With fellow immortal body's enlightenment, I should be able to truly refine the dark breaking pill. Fellow immortal Heavenly Phoenix's fake body technique should also be able to make great progress, and I should be able to enter the true spirit severing stage at any time. Finished speaking, Jade Archive Xiao Hua waved his hands, and the pill refining technique was activated again. Although the technique was still the same, the fluctuations produced were somewhat different. Although the difference was slight, there was an essential difference, and the pill liquid produced was also completely different from before. Jade Archive Xiao Hua was concentrating on refining pills, and the nearby Xiao Guo was also happily refining pills with him. Suddenly, Jade Archive Xiao Hua raised his head again, and a smile appeared on his face. He looked at the horizon and said, "Good things really come one after another. Just now, my cultivation improved, and fellow immortal body has the possibility of coming out of seclusion, and this scarlet explosion has also stopped. Damn it, the North Sea is so big, after several months of drifting, who knows where I am now? Forget it, let my physical body fly for a while, and let I refine this pill first." After refining several thousand dark breaking pills, Jade Archive Xiao Hua withdrew from the space. When Xiao Hua opened his eyes, before he could clearly see where he was fascinated by the scene before him. He saw that he was at the bottom of the blue sea, and palm-sized fish were happily swimming. There were more than 100,000 of these fish, and at first glance, it looked like a fish storm. Each fish was a wind in this hurricane, and every time they swam together, it was like a storm was blowing. The pure blue sea water was like the sky, and this storm was wantonly dancing in the sky. Xiao Hua's body was surrounded by these 100,000 fish, and he was flying in the storm. Xiao Hua opened his eyes, his hands and feet immediately moved. This movement was not important, but his body that swam along with the storm of fishes immediately changed with the direction of the storm. Thousands of fishes in the vicinity immediately discovered that these fishes swam away in a panic. It was as if a hurricane was blowing with Xiao Hua as the center. In just a moment, this hurricane blew out an extremely large space. Whoosh whoosh. At this moment, the seawater did not seem to exist at the bottom of the sea. Waves of chaotic sounds were emitted from these fishes' bodies. Amidst the sounds, the storm of fishes quickly blew to other places, leaving Xiao Hua standing in the sea with a somewhat dumbstruck expression. The tranquil sea bed was so beautiful. The pure sea water was like a serene jade crystal, and the sunlight directly penetrated into the water, brightly illuminating the surrounding several lee fish of different colors, but also gorgeous and colorful, swayed their tails, leisurely swimming in their own world. Among them, there were actually a few that swam to Xiao Hua's side, and snuggled up to him like a spoiled child. When Xiao Hua's finger moved slightly, the water rippled, and these few fish fled in panic. In the distant water, there were some multicolored corals, and some small insects were wriggling on them. In the gaps between the corals, clusters of lush seaweed grew, and among the seaweed, there were some shellfish, and some fish that were smaller than a thumb shuttled back and forth. Words are sometimes limited. Quiet like a virgin, moving like a fleeing rabbit, these are already insufficient to describe this boundless North Sea. Perhaps using moodiness can slightly express its impermanence. Xiao Hua admired for a moment, and his hands and feet moved, slowly swimming from the seabed to the surface. He was somewhat reluctant to leave this serene and beautiful seabed, and wanted to use this moment of sweetness to make up for his body that was injured by Kai Bao. After all, after being ravaged by Kai Bao for several months, although Xiao Hua's body was rare and tough, it was already badly damaged under the power of heaven and earth. Heavenly Phoenix Xiao Hua and Fiend Spirit Xiao Hua had already begun to repair it, and it seemed that they would not be able to recover easily in a short period of time. While swimming, Xiao Hua pondered, "It has been several months since Kai Bao began. I was lucky enough to escape from the dragon boat, and even if it was not destroyed by Kai Bao, it would not be in good condition. The dragons of the Heavenly Abode River wanted to perish together with Ao Jing of the North Sea Dragon Palace, and I think their wish has been fulfilled. However, if I can live safely, Ao Jian, Ao Jing, Jiang Tian, Jiang Xia, and the others will also be able to survive. With Kai Bao, the dragons of the Heavenly Abode River might even be able to escape from the scheme of the North Sea Dragon Palace. However, I have been flying with Kai Bao for so long, and I don't know where I am now. As for little Yun of the Heavenly Abode River, sigh, what a joke. I think Ao Jing has already brought her back to the North Sea Dragon Palace. Liu Yi, it's not that I don't want to save little Yun, but I really don't have the strength to do so." After swimming for a while, Xiao Hua saw that he had reached the surface of the sea. He had already made up his mind to explain to Liu Yi, and then he identified the direction and prepared to fly back to the hidden immortal continent and return to the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Since he had made up his mind, Xiao Hua did not delay any longer. He formed a seal and rushed out of the water, and his figure appeared high in the sky. Hiss! Something's wrong. When Xiao Hua steadied himself, he looked around and saw that the sky around him was overflowing with light. Circles of light that looked like polar magnetic light enveloped the sea for nearly 10,000 miles. The projection of this light was extremely strong, and when it fell on the sea, it could clearly see the bottom of the sea for more than 10 miles. Xiao Hua could not help but exclaim, "No wonder I could easily see the reef at the bottom of the sea. It turns out that this light is not the sun, but this. Where is this place?" Chapter 3977. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, as soon as his divine sense was released, he felt as if he was being cut by a sharp blade. This sea could actually hurt divine sense. Xiao Hua's expression changed slightly. It was already difficult for him to identify the direction in ordinary places. Now that he couldn't see the sun at all, how could he tell where he was? Oh, not good. This is just like leaving the wolf's den and entering the tiger's den. Xiao Hua hurriedly moved his body and flew towards a random place. However, this sea was so strange that Xiao Hua's flying technique was also restricted, causing his speed to be much slower. After another moment, the clear sky suddenly flashed with lightning and thunder. The lightning in this sea was very strange. They were all dark green in color and were very similar to Xiao Hua's lightning and thunder technique. What was special was that within the lightning, there were waves of strange movements that resounded through heaven and earth. It sounded like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, but also like the moaning of gods and ghosts. In short, even Xiao Hua couldn't help but tremble in his heart when he heard it. Swoosh! Following the lightning, inexplicable raindrops began to fall. There was no rain at all in the clouds. Moreover, the raindrops and lightning appeared quickly and disappeared quickly. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the raindrops and lightning were gone. Only the halo in the sky looked as if it had just been washed by water. It was abnormally clear. So strange, so strange. Xiao Hua frowned and looked around, then released his soul. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, his soul was not restricted at all. In fact, in this sea, his soul was even stronger than before. Could it be? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he had a trace of understanding in his heart. This sea is like the Million Meng Mountains. There are traces of soul cultivators. Just as Xiao Hua thought of this, his eyes suddenly lit up. His aimless soul had already found something unusual. Xiao Hua flew towards that place without hesitation. This time, Xiao Hua learned his lesson. He used his soul power and the flying technique of soul cultivators, so his speed was much faster than before. After flying for an entire pack of cigarettes, Xiao Hua finally arrived at a place. A huge dragon's body was floating on the surface of the sea. Most of the scales on the dragon's body had been shaved off. The dragon's body was stained with blood, and there were many wounds of various sizes. It was a horrible sight. The dragon's horns were completely broken, and half of the dragon's mouth was torn apart. More than half of the dragon's teeth were also missing. Next to the dragon's broken body, there were some tattered things that seemed to be the wreckage of a ship or broken demon artifacts. Although the giant dragon floated motionlessly on the surface of the sea, Xiao Hua's soul consciousness could tell that this giant dragon still had an aura, and its vitality was very vigorous. Xiao Huafei landed beside the huge dragon and carefully examined it. The dragon's body also had a faint surge of dragon aura, and those terrifying wounds were slowly mending. He thought for a moment, then simply sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea in the distance, quietly waiting for the huge dragon to awaken. As long as it was a dragon, it must be from the North Sea Dragon Palace. It was naturally more familiar with the North Sea region than Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't need it to bring him to the North Sea Dragon Palace. As long as it pointed to the hidden immortal continent, and even brought him out of this sea region, it would be fine. Mending the body naturally didn't require Xiao Hua to deliberately do it. While Xiao Hua was meditating, he refined the two-winged spectrometer that he bought from Zhai Xinglu into the soul-punishing light. Naturally, it wasn't that simple to perfect this soul-punishing light. The fusion of the extreme magnetic light and the soul-punishing light had to be tempered again and again. After Xiao Hua's initial refinement, he placed the soul-punishing light under the immortal beheading stage, allowing the lightning water to refine it. Presumably, in the future, This soul-punishing light would be another great killing weapon that Xiao Hua personally refined to perfection, right? Roar! A weak dragon roar finally came out from the mouth of the huge dragon after more than a month. The huge dragon opened its eyes, and the first thing it saw was Xiao Hua standing in front of it with a smile. You are. The dragon's hoarse dragon language sounded very obscure. It seemed that the dragon's throat was also severely injured. Facing the giant dragon's question, Xiao Hua had already thought about it. He didn't hide anything and replied, I am Daoist Dao Sect Xiao Hua, Daoist Dao Sect's Daoist Dao Sect. I have some matters in the North Sea. As for the specifics, if fellow immortal knows, then know. If you don't, then don't ask. I encountered Kai Bao in the North Sea and was swept to this sea. Because I couldn't find the direction and met you, I simply waited here for you to wake up. You and I can get out of this sea together. When you and I are safe, you just have to tell me where the hidden immortal continent is. What do you think? If a dragon didn't take human form, Xiao Hua wouldn't be able to tell who was who. Xiao Hua wasn't sure if this dragon was the dragon general he saw on the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace. That was why he said such ambiguous words. Sure enough, the dragon was very puzzled. He was confused by Xiao Hua's words. He opened his mouth and wanted to ask, but he didn't know what to ask. Seeing this, Xiao Hua smiled. He knew that this dragon wasn't the dragon general he saw on the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace. He said with a smile, fellow immortal doesn't need to ask anything. You just need to know that you and I are now grasshoppers on the same rope. What dragon race, what human race, don't take it to heart. My only goal is to escape from here. This old man understands. The dragon finally understood. He looked around and asked, could it be that this sea is very dangerous? Indeed. Xiao Hua nodded. Fellow immortal, release your Yuanshan first and you will know. Sigh. The dragon just released his Yuanshan and immediately grimaced. He exclaimed, this. What is this place? It can even tear apart Yuanshan. Fellow immortal, if a dragon general of the North Sea Dragon Palace doesn't know, then this Xiao naturally doesn't know either. Xiao Hua smiled. This Xiao has been waiting here for fellow immortal to clear up his doubt. The dragon looked at Xiao Hua and swam with some difficulty. The draconic chi around his body covered the multicolored light and slowly shrunk. He then answered with a bitter smile, it seems that Daoist Xiao is going to be disappointed. This old man isn't a dragon general of the North Sea Dragon Palace, so I'm not particularly familiar with the sea territory of the North Sea. Ah! Xiao Hua was shocked. He said, the dragon race in the North Sea. If you aren't from the North Sea Dragon Palace, then where can you be from? Could it be that fellow immortal? This. The dragon looked at Xiao Hua with some difficulty. He said, it said that this old man met Daoist Xiao by fate. However, as Daoist Xiao said, there are some things that Daoist Xiao knows. If you don't know, Daoist Xiao shouldn't ask too much. This old man's name is Jiangan. I'm not a dragon of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Jiangan. Xiao Hua thought for a moment. After a while, he asked tentatively, so you're a dragon of the Heavenly Abode River? How did you know? The dragon was shocked. Draconic chi surged around him and he retreated. He was on high alert. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, this Xiao is familiar with your Heavenly Abode River's Great Elder Jiang Tian, Second Elder Jiang Xia, and Third Elder Jiang Hai. The reason this Xiao wasn't willing to say before was related to your Heavenly Abode River. You know my three elders? Jiangan was stunned. However, he still asked curiously, how is the reason you're talking about related to my Heavenly Abode River? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. He seemed to have thought of something. He asked incredulously, this Xiao understands now. You followed the Feather Spirit Palace's ship out to sea. You didn't follow Ao Jing's dragon ship back to the North Sea Dragon Palace. The dragon general you followed was Aosha. How did you know? That dragon was even more taken aback as he blurted out. However, after a moment, he understood again and shouted, this old man understands now. You You followed Great Elder Jiang Tian to the North Sea Dragon Palace's dragon ship to save my heavenly abode river's little princess? At this point, the dragon didn't wait for Xiao Hua to speak and asked again, "Can you save my princess?" Alas, things in this world are really strange. Xiao Hua sighed. Looking at Jiangan's anxiety, he shook his head and said, "Your princess Jiang Hong isn't on the dragon ship at all. She's in Aosha's hands." "How is that possible?" Jiangan was stunned and said in disbelief, "This old man changed my figure and followed Aosha. I didn't hear him say anything at all. Moreover, until I met Kai Bao, I didn't see him change at all. How could my princess be with Aosha?" "Then what about Aosha?" Xiao Hua asked. Alas, under Kai Bao, this old man was able to keep his life. "How could I care about Aosha?" Jiangan said regretfully, "If I knew Long Bei was in Aosha's hands, this old man would have killed Aosha even if it meant risking my life. Forget it, forget it." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "A Kai Bao destroyed the North Sea Dragon Palace's plan and the Heavenly Abode River's tracking. It's already good that we were able to escape. By the way, according to Ao Jing, you left Yuling Bay with Aosha a long time ago. Why did you still encounter Kai Bao like us? You humans often say that man proposes but the heavens disposes. Although Ao Jing sent Aosha to leave Yuling Bay on the night Ao Xian returned to Yuling Bay and this old man hurriedly sneaked into the ship under the orders of the third elder, the ship only left Yuling Bay for a few days before encountering a sea storm. Although this sea storm was not as strong as Kai Bao, it was much more powerful than an ordinary sea storm. Although the ship dived into the sea and didn't suffer much impact, the sea beast tide that was triggered by the sea storm attacked the ship. Aosha and the others desperately resisted and had no choice but to change their course to avoid the sea beast tide. When the sea storm stopped and the ship returned to its normal course, it encountered the Kai Bao a few months later. This Kai Bao's ship was simply unable to resist the Kai Bao. The ship was torn to pieces and this old man was also separated from Aosha and the other members of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Alas, if I knew Long Bei was with Aosha, this old man. What a pity. At the end, Jiangan sighed again. Chapter 3978. Xiao Hua blinked his eyes and said with a smile, "Fellow immortal, you don't have to regret it anymore. We will look for him in this sea. Since you drifted here and I can also come here, the other dragons might be able to as well. Maybe we can find Aosha?" "That's right." Jiangan nodded. "This old man will accompany you." Then, Jiangan transformed into his human form and flew into the air, following Xiao Hua in search of a place. One man and one dragon searched while talking. Xiao Hua also roughly told him what happened on the dragon boat with Jiang Tian and the other dragons. When Jiangan heard that Ao Jian was on the dragon boat, he smiled bitterly. Obviously, he already knew Ao Jian's name. Rumble. Before they could find anything, the atmosphere in the sea changed again. Dark green lightning and the whimpering sound of heaven and earth sounded again. Looking at the pitter-patter of raindrops, Jiangan's body shook. He stood in the air for a long time without moving. Xiao Hua looked at Jiangan and knew that he found something. He didn't ask in a hurry. After the lightning passed, Jiangan raised his head and roared. Unfortunately, this roar didn't spread too far. Jiangan turned to look at Xiao Hua and said with a bitter smile, "This old man knows where this is. Oh, it seems this place is very dangerous." Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong and asked tentatively, "What is this place?" "Spring Penetrating Forbidden Sea." Jiangan said word by word, "The first of the 4 forbidden seas in the North Sea." "What? Spring Penetrating Forbidden Sea?" Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air and said in surprise, "This is the legendary spring-penetrating forbidden sea that wails like ghosts and howls like wolves all year round. Whenever a ship or a member of the sea race accidentally passes by, it will trigger lightning. If one is lucky, even if the ship is destroyed and the body is seriously injured, they can still appear from other places. If one is unlucky, not even a piece of wreckage can be found." "Daoist Xiao is right," Jiangan said with a bitter smile. Moreover, what Daoist Xiao said is the outside of the spring-penetrating forbidden sea. This old man has never heard of any member of the sea race entering the inner sea of the spring-penetrating Forbidden Sea and being able to safely leave. And this time, we are probably in the inner sea of the spring-penetrating Forbidden Sea. Motherfucker, how is this possible? Xiao Hua almost cursed. Jiangan explained, on normal days, we don't need to enter the inner sea of the spring-cleansing Forbidden Sea. We've already been torn apart by the Forbidden Sea. This time, he probably borrowed the power of the Scarlet Explosion to enter the Forbidden Sea. But since we've entered the inner sea of the Forbidden Spring Sea, I think, we won't have the chance to leave. It doesn't matter if I don't go out. Xiao Hua looked around. Although he was slightly flustered, he still smiled and said, there doesn't seem to be any dangers in the Forbidden Ocean. It's not bad for us to cultivate here. Jiangan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Spiritual Master Xiao, don't be too optimistic. Since the members of the sea race who entered this place couldn't survive, how can we live? Presumably, the dangers in the Forbidden Sea have been destroyed by the Scarlet Explosion, so they won't show their ferocity for the time being. At this point, Jiangan seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was also shocked. The man and the dragon looked at each other and shouted at the same time, that's right. If we want to escape, we have to take advantage of the fact that the Forbidden Spring Sea hasn't recovered and rush to the edge of the Forbidden Sea to see if there's a chance to escape. If we're late, we won't have the chance to rush to the edge. I can't recognize the direction in the North Sea. I'll listen to you. Xiao Hua hurriedly shouted. We don't need to look for Aosha anymore. It's better to leave this place quickly. Let's go. Jiangan nodded. He didn't care about looking for Long Bay anymore. With a loud roar, his body swayed and dived into the sea. Why aren't you flying? Xiao Hua was surprised. He was about to send a voice transmission to ask, but when he saw Jiangan's speed in the sea was much faster than when he was in the air, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Judging others by his own standards was really laughable. The dragon race was originally a member of the sea race. Of course, they were much faster in the water than in the air. Moreover, the inexplicable restriction in the sea was a bit weaker. Why didn't Jiangan go under the sea? Fortunately, Xiao Hua's water escape technique had already been cultivated to a high level. Under the urging of his magic power, he was able to catch up with Jiangan in the sea. The situation was dangerous. Xiao Hua could already feel the sharp teeth gradually recovering in the Forbidden Spring Ocean. At this moment, he was really regretting that he didn't take advantage of this period of time to go to the edge of the Forbidden Spring Ocean to take a look. Maybe he had already escaped by now. Fortunately, one man and one dragon flew for a full 3 days and 3 nights. Other than the strange phenomena in the sky, other dangers didn't appear. Moreover, in the sea, waves of chaotic fluctuations mixed with the sound of thunder gradually appeared and began to obstruct Xiao Hua and Jiangan's escape. Boom! Just when Xiao Hua and Jiangan were hesitating whether to continue forward or not, a fist-sized whirlpool suddenly appeared in front of Jiangan. This whirlpool flickered with dark green crystal threads. Between the crystal threads, there were grey-white spatial cracks. At the edge of the whirlpool, there were even layers of thunder that were silently vibrating. This whirlpool was really too sudden. Jiangan didn't have time to dodge, and his dragon claw grabbed towards the whirlpool. Catcher! Long before the dragon claw touched the whirlpool had already begun to expand. The thunder at the edge of the whirlpool struck the dragon claw, and a small half of the dragon claw was immediately shattered. Moreover, as the whirlpool expanded, a powerful suction force pulled Jiangan, and he was about to fall into the whirlpool. Roar! Jiangan roared loudly. His dragon body danced with all his strength, trying to dodge the whirlpool. However, Jiangan was in a hurry to escape, and didn't slow down. Moreover, his dragon form couldn't be compared to his human form, and it was difficult to dodge in a hurry. Seeing that the edge of the whirlpool was about to shatter the dragon claw, if Jiangan fell into the whirlpool, the consequences could be imagined. At this critical moment, Xiao Hua waved his big sleeve, and the Heaven and Earth sleeve technique covered Jiangan's dragon tail. He urged his true essence to pull, and it just happened to be balanced with the suction force of the whirlpool. Jiangan sensed it, and his dragon body twisted. Boom! With a sound, He flew out of the sea and landed in midair. Many thanks, Daoist Xiao. Jiangan saw Xiao Hua also fly out, and bowed with lingering fear. You're welcome. Xiao Hua's face was gloomy. Looking around, he waved his hand and said, let's find a way out first. Jiangan nodded, and narrowed his eyes to look around. He saw that the whole world was filled with that kind of dark green thunderbolt, and around this dark green thunderbolt, there were numerous whirlpools. These whirlpools were either circular or rectangular, and there were even some irregular shapes. What was special was that between these whirlpools, whether it was the sea water or the air, everything was distorted by the fluctuations between the whirlpools. In this distorted space, light and shadow were elongated or compressed, and the sound also underwent extreme changes. The sound of thunder was sometimes like falling rain, sometimes like burning fire, sometimes like war drums, and sometimes even without sound. Looking at the earth-shattering whirlpools, as well as the black and white crystal threads within the whirlpools, Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed. He was stunned in his heart, and seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly waved his hand, and a sea map appeared in his hand. Xiao Hua glanced at it, then looked at Jiangan, who was standing in front of him. At this time, Jiangan also said with some joy, Daoist Xiao, this place has already reached the inner layer of the spring-penetrating forbidden sea. This old man has seen a sea map before, and it seems to be the spring-penetrating forbidden sea. Follow this old man. If nothing unexpected happens, we will definitely be able to walk out of this forbidden sea. Once we are out of the forbidden sea, this old man will bring Daoist Xiao back to Yuling Bay. Great. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said with a smile, it seems that waiting for fellow immortal for more than a month was indeed the right choice. Of course. Jiang Yang laughed heartily and confidently flew towards the light and shadow between the whirlpools. Woo! Wherever Jiang Yang flew past, a strange whistling sound would be produced. Jiang Yang's body was also stretched to an extreme extent. Xiao Hua followed behind, and of course, he also felt the abnormality in this distortion. He also knew in his heart that if it was not the correct path, the light and shadow might be a whirlpool, and even after the light and shadow, there might also be a man-devouring whirlpool or thunderbolt. After walking like this for a full 2 hours, the surrounding whirlpools really began to reduce, and the dark green thunderbolt also weakened. Jiangan smiled and pointed to the 2 whirlpools in front of him and said, Daoist Xiao, after leaving these 2 whirlpools, we should have walked half of it. The rest is the true outer layer of the spring-penetrating forbidden sea. Although there are still some thunderbolts, their power has already decreased a lot. With our strength, we shouldn't be affected anymore. Haha, thank you fellow immortal. Xiao Hua laughed, and his heart was bursting with joy. He cupped his hands and said, if not for fellow immortal, this Xiao really doesn't know how to get out of there. Alas, actually, it's also a fluke. Although Jiangan sighed, his tone was also proud. First, the scarlet storm weakened the inner sea of the spring-penetrating forbidden sea, and we were able to easily come into contact with the outer sea. Second, our luck was good, and we immediately found a place this old man is familiar with. If it was a few dozen li away, this old man wouldn't have been able to find the way out so easily. Fellow immortal, please, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Let's talk after we get out. All right. Jiangan nodded. Daoist Xiao, please follow this old man. As he said this, Jiangan urged his figure to enter the light and shadow between the 2 whirlpools. Seeing Jiangan's figure elongate, Xiao Hua also flew in like before. However, just as Xiao Hua's figure entered the light and shadow, a huge force suddenly appeared and hit Xiao Hua's body, forcefully pushing him towards the distant whirlpool. This strange change appeared in a hurry. If Xiao Hua fell into the whirlpool, he would definitely die. At this critical moment, Xiao Hua seemed to have already predicted this. His body suddenly spun rapidly, and like a spinning top, that force was instantly pushed to the side by him. At the side of his body, Jiangan's awkward and unbalanced dragon body was revealed. Rumble. A green light appeared between Xiao Hua's eyebrows, and he used the lightning flash and thunder roll technique, enveloping the light and shadow between the 2 whirlpools. In a few breaths' time, Xiao Hua and Jiangan's figures gradually became clear within the light and shadow. The three corpses Yin lightning actually propped up a dark green space. Chapter 3979. You. Jiangan panicked as he looked at the space covered by lightning. He didn't dare to barge in recklessly. What are you doing, spiritual master Xiao? I was in a hurry to deal with the situation, but I didn't expect to accidentally injure you. Aosha. Xiao Hua looked at Jiangan coldly and said, why are you still hiding it? Ah. You already knew about it. Aosha was shocked. He looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief and asked, how did you know? Mph, what's so difficult about that? Xiao Hua said coldly. Jiang Xia said it clearly. She regretted not sending a powerful dragon general to follow Aosha, which means that Jiangan's strength is very ordinary. But when I saved you just now, I already sensed that your strength is comparable to Aoshen's. If Jiangan had this strength, he wouldn't have followed you to the North Sea Dragon Palace, right? Aosha didn't expect this seemingly kind human to be so meticulous. Also, Jiang Hong was hidden in the dragon shell by the North Sea Dragon Palace. As a dragon of the Heavenly Paradise River, Jiangan couldn't have known. He just entered the ship as a dispensable chess piece, but you actually mentioned the dragon shell twice. I can't help but be suspicious. Xiao Hua ignored Aosha and said, do you know a saying of the human race? 300 taels of silver here. Aosha shook his head, this is nothing. My dragon race captured criminals and placed them in the dragon shell. What you said is too far-fetched. So, the dragon shell is still with you? Xiao Hua asked meaningfully. Unfortunately, Aosha didn't answer and didn't show any strange behavior. The most important thing is that I obtained a sea map by chance. I bought it from the North Sea Dragon Palace's Yazi auction house. Xian Kong said that it was only recently drawn by the North Sea Dragon Palace's inspector. If you are a dragon from the Heavenly Abode River, how do you know about this sea map? So, you can only be a sea general of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Of course, I don't know the name of the Heavenly Paradise River's sea race. Since you know and still pretend to be a dragon, obviously. You're the dragon general who killed Jiangan. If you're not Aosha, who else can you be? Since you already suspected it, why haven't you made a move yet? Aosha sneered. Xiao Hua sighed and said, although Xiao Hua suspected you, I didn't intend to expose you. Because you and I can be considered friends in adversity. If you and I can safely walk out of this forbidden spring sea, this Xiao will be indebted to you, and this Xiao will not attack you. Of course, this Xiao will definitely obtain the Longbei on you. Other than that, I won't have any other requests. I originally had the dragon shell on me. Unfortunately, it was lost in the Scarlet Storm. Even if you capture me, you won't be able to get the dragon shell. Xiao Hua smiled. If fellow immortal had directly admitted that he was Aosha from the beginning, I might have been able to believe you. But you refuse to admit your identity. It's obvious that you're afraid of arousing my suspicion. You're afraid that I'll find Longbei on you. In the eyes of the human race, this is a blatant attempt to cover up your identity. Chimpage. Aosha sneered. The human race has always been cunning. Now that things have reached this point, this old man will not let you and Jiang Hong live even if I have to risk my life. And to tell you the truth, even if you obtain the dragon shell, you won't be able to awaken Jiang Hong within it. How can a human like you know the restriction secret technique of my North Sea Dragon Palace? Ha ha. Xiao Hua flipped his hand and took out the sword gourd. He laughed and said, if you don't risk your life, you can still keep your life. But now, whether you live or die, it's no longer up to you to decide. Besides, Jiang Hong's restriction, not to mention this Xiao has the Heavenly Abode River behind him. Even if the Heavenly Abode River can't do anything, this Xiao can still easily capture it. If you want to use this to threaten this Xiao, then you're making a big mistake. Roar. Amidst the lightning, Aosha roared. His entire dragon body expanded. His bald dragon horn flashed with a strange brilliance as he charged towards Xiao Hua. He had a good plan. He was prepared to fight between the two whirlpools and find an opportunity to knock Xiao Hua into one of the whirlpools. If it was an ordinary human cultivator, of course, they wouldn't be able to compare to Aosha's dragon body, but how could Xiao Hua be an ordinary human cultivator? Moreover, Xiao Hua had already tested Aosha's strength before. It was only similar to Ao Xian's, and after Ao Shu was ravaged by Kai Bao, he had yet to recover from his injuries. His strength was greatly reduced, so how could he be Xiao Hua's opponent? Xiao Hua roared coldly. The three corpses Yin Thunder suddenly shrank and grabbed Aosha like a giant hand. Aosha! Xiao Hua shouted coldly. The three corpses Yin Thunder suddenly shrank and grabbed Aosha like a giant hand. Roar! Aosha frantically struggled. The green light between Xiao Hua's eyebrows flashed again and again, and the groans of the gods and ghosts within the lightning became more and more intense. The lightning not only imprisoned Aosha, but also shattered the light between the two vortexes. Waves of soul technique fluctuations appeared along with the thunder and lightning characters, and from time to time, they spread around the Forbidden Spring Sea. This spread was extremely fast, and in a moment, it had already covered more than 100 li wherever the fluctuations swept. The originally inexplicable fluctuations in the Forbidden Spring Sea were disturbed, and the sound of thunder became louder and louder. Xiao Hua coldly looked at Aosha, and the spiritual power in his body surged. He raised his hand and pointed at the sword gourd, and said, "Quick, Su." A silver-white thing with a nose and eyes appeared in the mouth of the sword gourd. As that thing's eyes moved, a faint white thread flew out and landed on Aosha's dragon head. Woo-woo! Above Aosha's dragon head, a five-colored light flashed. Within the light, a faint little dragon emitted a golden light and did its best to resist the white thread. However, when the white thread fell, the light was like a bubble being pierced by a needle, and when the light disappeared, the white thread really nailed itself between the little golden dragon's eyebrows. The little golden dragon instantly stopped struggling, and disappeared into the dragon head. Looking at Aosha again, he also stopped struggling, and the originally ferocious dragon eyes showed a rare sluggish look. Xiao Hua coldly looked, and the corner of his mouth slightly raised, and he sneered, "Dragon clan." As expected of a proud son of heaven, this Aosha is just an ordinary dragon general, and he has the power of heaven and earth to protect his soul. If this Xiao's soul-slaying Yuan light hadn't been refined by the two-wing spectrometer and then tempered by the lightning water, I'm afraid it would have been difficult to succeed. While speaking, two faint green and red soul-slaying Yuan light flew out from the sword gourd. As soon as the Yuan light appeared, the entire light shadow and lightning light began to crack. When the soul-slaying Yuan light fell on Aosha's huge dragon head, it spun gently. Puff! Blood splashed out, and a dragon general of the North Sea Dragon Palace was killed by Xiao Hua so easily. Quick! Without waiting for the huge dragon body to return to its original form, Xiao Hua hurriedly formed a seal to restrict the dragon body, and at the same time, he urged his mind power. Bing! The Buddhist 9 syllables mantra came out of his mouth. However, just as Xiao Hua's brows relaxed and was about to reach out to grab Aosha's corpse, a huge roar suddenly came from all around Xiao Hua. Tens of thousands of whirlpools whimpered at the same time. Each whirlpool flickered with dark green light strands. These light strands converged with the light strands of Xiao Hua's lightning flash and thunder roll technique, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as they converged towards Xiao Hua. Oh, not good. Xiao Hua was shocked. He knew that his soul technique had caused a change in the Forbidden Spring Sea. He released his mind and covered the dragon corpse, and instantly put it into the space. As soon as the gigantic dragon's corpse disappeared, "Catcha catcha!" A series of crisp sounds rang out. Xiao Hua's three corpses Yin Thunder suddenly exploded in the surroundings. A kind of irregular ripple appeared in the light and shadow. This ripple seemed to pull open the curtain of the void. Those tens of thousands of vortexes were like tens of thousands of small hands, tearing the void apart. Woo! Behind the tearing void, tens of thousands of green seal characters were circulating, and tens of thousands of lightning were wreaking havoc. The huge sound was accompanied by the power of heaven and earth, and the chanting of gods and ghosts. All of a sudden, all the seawater, all the light shadow, and everything of Xiao Hua, including his thoughts, eyes, body, and so on, were pulled into it. There was no way for Xiao Hua to resist. A tearing force that was 3 times more powerful than the blood of gods and demons was born from these green seal characters, crushing Xiao Hua's body. Every green seal character was like a huge fist, hitting Xiao Hua with all their strength. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless. He urged his holy bloodline to speed up the fusion, and also used the sky infusion technique to block the strongest attack of the forbidden spring sea. Granny. Xiao Hua once again fell into the tofu grinding state. His thoughts couldn't move in the green seal characters. This Xiao finally understands why the forbidden spring sea is so feared by the sea race and the dragon race. This is probably the ruins of soul cultivators. They are afraid of soul attacks. Isn't this their tomb? Moreover, the tearing force of these green seal characters is so terrifying, even the dragon race. I'm afraid they can't deal with it. Hey! That's right, why aren't there any soul attacks here? However, Xiao Hua once again struggled to move his eyes. He suddenly realized that he hadn't completely retracted the soul strands he used to cast the lightning flashing thunder rolling thunder technique. When the whirlpool produced the soul force of heaven and earth, these soul strands covered his body. Originally, there was some lightning in these soul strands. When they came into contact with the green seal text in the whirlpool, the text naturally wouldn't reject them. The green seal characters around Xiao Hua's body were like a huge mill, and also like a huge river. While crushing Xiao Hua, they also urged him to flow forward. After an unknown amount of time, it seemed to have reached the end of the river, or perhaps the gods and ghosts pushing the mill were tired. All the green seal characters suddenly stopped, and then all the green seal characters seemed to transform, shrinking and splitting. Not long after, the entire space was filled with green seal characters, each one of them flickering like stars. Chapter 3980. Oh! That's the most basic green seal script. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up as if he had grasped something. However, before he could think any further, an extremely obscure sound resounded in the air. After that, the green seal text instantly shattered, and the entire sky turned pitch black. Then, a green light flashed, and an aura that seemed capable of destroying the heavens and the earth surged out explosively. Wherever the aura swept past, the green seal text would appear again. However, the green seal text was extremely lively, and they started to collide with each other to form new green seal text. Seeing such a terrifying scene, how could Xiao Hua, who had cultivated as a Confucian cultivator, not know that this green seal character was about to give birth to a new green seal character? This green seal character possessed the power to destroy the heavens and earth, and he was likely the target of this green seal character's attack. Although Xiao Hua really wanted to see what this green seal text was, how could he let it take shape? Soul cultivator friend, quickly help me. Xiao Hua roared without hesitation and hurriedly pulled soul cultivator Xiao Hua out of the mysterious dark cloud. Sigh. Xiao Hua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air as he entered the space. His body trembled like a sieve. Fellow Daoist, who did you provoke? Is it the 12 gods? Before Xiao Hua could finish his sentence, an intense light burst out from his body. Hundreds of millions of soul strands flew out from the light, each carrying a small green seal script. They flew towards the green seal script that was struggling to form in the air. Swish, swish, swish. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua no longer looked like a human. It was as if the green light in the entire space was his figure. Moreover, every time the soul strands flew out, the green seal script that had just been formed quieted down and slowly disappeared. It was as if it had turned into nothingness along with the green seal script released by soul cultivator Xiao Hua. Seeing this, Xiao Hua's heart calmed down. He already understood that soul cultivator Xiao Hua was using different syllables of the green seal script to cancel each other out and prevent new ones from forming. However, seeing Xiao Hua's green light gradually weakening, Xiao Hua's vigilance rose again. After all, soul cultivator Xiao Hua was only a soul sealing sorcerer. If he hadn't reached the peak of the 9 heavens of spirit origin, he wouldn't have been able to grasp all the basic green seal script. However, the green seal script of Yuanshu Sky and Solitary Sky, as well as the legendary Beyond the Heavens, were extremely powerful. Even if soul cultivator Xiao Hua used all his strength to destroy the green seal script he knew, the remaining green seal script would definitely attack him. Roar! Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. Golden light burst out from his body, and the heavenly phoenix demon form appeared. Boom! Xiao Hua's soul cultivator Xiao Hua heard a thunderclap in the air. Xiao Hua's figure again, but this time, his appearance was incomparably thin. When he looked at the space again, A huge green seal character had already condensed and was falling towards Xiao Hua like a meteor. Just as Xiao Hua was about to urge his divine sense to resist, he heard the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's uncontrollable ecstasy and whispered, "Fellow Daoist, don't resist." Xiao Hua couldn't believe it. "This is the rhythm of smashing you and me into mincemeat. If I hadn't come out before, you definitely wouldn't have been able to resist this green seal script." Soul cultivator Xiao Hua looked at the green seal text that was getting closer and closer. Green light flickered in his eyes. But now, the majority of the green seal text has been destroyed by this poor Daoist. This green seal text's power is less than 30%. You should be able to resist it with your body. Also, don't forget that I haven't cultivated these green seal script, and there are even some that haven't been recorded in the sorcerer's canon. I have a premonition that if I face these green seal script head-on, I might be able to see the so-called beyond the heavens. Are you sure? Xiao Hua had already sensed the extreme danger and asked. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua shook his head. It's just a premonition, I'm not sure. But, don't you think it's worth the risk? All right. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and nodded. I understand. You probably want to see the great terror between life and death, right? Perhaps. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua declined to comment, but he didn't have the luxury of time to say anything. As soon as the huge green seal character fell down, an unparalleled suction and repulsion force was born at the same time. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua's thin body turned into a green light that was torn apart by this tremendous force and rushed into the green seal character. Boom! The green seal script smashed into soul cultivator Xiao Hua, but it didn't stop at all. Then, it fell on Xiao Hua's body. The tremendous impact smashed Xiao Hua's demonic body into a thin sheet of paper. Many parts of his demonic body were torn to shreds. It seemed like this sheet of paper was just a hair away from being smashed into 132 tiny dots. The moment soul cultivator Xiao Hua came into contact with the green seal script, layers of strange images rushed into his mind. These images were somewhat similar to the 9 heavens of spirit origin, but there were also essential differences. Xiao Hua couldn't explain why, but he couldn't. Along with a huge rumble, the green seal text brought Xiao Hua to the bottom of the space, passing through thousands of layers of abyss, passing through layers of lightning, passing through layers of light and shadows. Pa! Xiao Hua's entire body shook, his mind turned black, all the primordial spirit in his body fainted at the same time. He looked at the huge green seal text again. It was like a melting snowball, it was about to disappear, but just as the green seal text dissolved, a green light flashed inside the green seal text. A strand of crystal light dragged all the green seal text into the space between Xiao Hua's eyebrows. Ha ha! Just as the light image entered, Xiao Hua suddenly opened his eyes. Before his body moved, he spoke first. You're all unconscious, right? Damn it, at the crucial moment, you still have to rely on I. Wasn't this the voice of the green-robed Xiao Hua? Ayo, why is my body so tattered? The green-robed Xiao Hua moved, then cried out in surprise. Fellow Daoist, your body isn't just yours, it's also mine, Fairy Hongshia's, and Shin's. Why don't you cherish it? Sigh, what is this place? Why are there so many bones, so many? Ha ha ha, I'm rich. Xiao Hua's body seemed to have never suffered such serious damage before. It was almost like a meat patty. Moreover, under this meat patty, there were many white bones. These white bones were stacked in layers, and the place where these white bones were piled up was an enormous basin. Around this basin, there were countless mountains. On each mountain peak, there was a strange building. Among these countless mountains, there were 13 giant pillars that pierced the sky. Each of these giant pillars was incomparably huge. However, everything was submerged in the sea. The towering pillars were also hidden in this mysterious seabed. In addition to these 13 pillars being particularly eye-catching, near the edge of the pillar in the middle, there was a building on top of a mountain peak. Countless tiny green lights were constantly emitted into the sea like shining stars. Green-robed Xiao Hua was looking at the countless heaven and earth bangles, demon weapons, magic treasures, and other items within the white bones. Needless to say, these were the remains left behind by the demon clan, sea clan, and human clan who had fallen into the forbidden spring sea over countless years. The treasures within must be something that even the immortal palace would drool over. I have to take away all the treasures. The green-robed Xiao Hua had a plan in a moment. Whether good or bad, useful or useless, nothing can be left behind. However, before that, I have to repair my body. Fellow Daoist Heavenly Phoenix and that little demon fairy are unconscious, so I can't repair them. Who knows how long it will take to repair them? Hehe, take a look at Eyes Spring Thunder secret art. With that, the green-robed Xiao Hua chanted an incantation. He opened his mouth and spat out a bolt of lightning, which turned into a bolt of lightning that covered Xiao Hua's body. As the lightning flashed, the endless water-based world origin chi in the sea frantically poured into the lightning. In a moment, Xiao Hua's body was completely covered in lightning. As the lightning flashed, strands of vitality seeped into Xiao Hua's body, nourishing his injured body and repairing everything that was damaged. Heavenly thunder was the power of heaven and earth. It was the end of vitality and also the beginning of vitality. Everything in the world was born from thunder and would also die from thunder. The spring thunder secret art was precisely the art of thunder that repaired the body. As for the green-robed Xiao Hua himself, he simply abandoned his body and controlled the similarly damaged formless nascent soul to fly out from Xiao Hua's lower dantian. The formless nascent soul was a spiritual body, so it was much easier to repair it than a physical body. In just a day and a night, the green-robed Xiao Hua had already repaired it. Then, he took the Kunlun mirror and rushed into the white bones. The Kunlun mirror's beam of light fell and absorbed everything. Even though it was so easy to collect them, it still took 10 days and 10 nights for green-robed Xiao Hua to store everything into the Kunlun mirror. It must be known that the Forbidden Sea had existed for countless years and countless monster race and human race had lost their lives in it. The things they left behind were innumerable. Perhaps, these 10 days and 10 nights were the happiest days of the green-robed Xiao Hua's life. Every day, he would hum "Sister, you can sit at the bow of the ship, shake the Kunlun mirror, and watch the universe bracelets fly into the beam of light." It was even more enjoyable than reprimanding tens of thousands of disciples. It looked like these nascent divinities didn't learn anything else from Xiao Hua, but their greedy and stingy character had been perfected. After collecting everything, the basin had disappeared, and a huge abyss appeared in front of the green-robed Xiao Hua. Inside the abyss, except for Xiao Hua who was lying there with his body flashing with lightning, it was so clean that it was as if a dog had licked it. After resting for a brief moment, the green-robed Xiao Hua once again came to the edge of the abyss. He raised his head and looked at the mountain ridges around him. These mountain ridges were located deep in the ocean, and they were quiet. Not even a single fish or a strand of seaweed could be found here. In fact, in many places of these mountain ridges, there were plants and millet plants that were very similar to the millions of Meng Mountains. Chapter 3981. Just as Xiao Hua was about to move, Xiao Hua's voice rang out, "Don't be impatient, fellow Daoist Eye. This should be the Soul Cultivator ruins covered in seawater. You're in a spirit body right now. If you're attacked by a hidden soul formation, you'll suffer immeasurable damage. Why don't we go together after my body is repaired?" Xiao Hua shrunk his neck and stuck out his tongue like a child who was caught doing something naughty. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "Whatever you say, fellow Daoist." Now that Xiao Hua had woken up, the heavenly phoenix Xiao Hua and the devil spirit Xiao Hua had also woken up. They began to cast their own secret techniques to complement the green-robed Xiao Hua's lightning technique, and began to repair their bodies. Xiao Hua was worried about the soul cultivator Xiao Hua, so he hurriedly sent his consciousness into the mysterious dark cloud. After entering the soul seal sky, he discovered that although the soul cultivator Xiao Hua had almost disappeared, and only a faint green core was left, this green core was obviously much more solid than before. Furthermore, inside the soul seal sky, the green seal script of the Magus Codex was constantly entangling the green core with countless soul strands. It seemed that as long as there was enough time, the soul cultivator Xiao Hua would recover sooner or later. Xiao Hua was relieved, but Little White Dragon was still complaining about Xiao Hua, as if soul cultivator Xiao Hua was his childhood sweetheart. It seemed to be very distressed. Xiao Hua naturally told Little White Dragon what happened. Little White Dragon knew that Soul Cultivator Xiao Hua's words and actions were correct, and that the flickering green core of Soul Cultivator Xiao Hua made Little White Dragon somewhat fearful. Therefore, Little White Dragon only warned him a few times and didn't say anything else. Xiao Hua came out of the mysterious cloud and focused on repairing his body. He was seriously injured this time, and it was somewhat similar to the monster race in Feather Spirit Bay. Xiao Hua wouldn't be easily injured, but if he was injured, it would be very troublesome to repair. It took him 100 days to repair most of his body. Since there were no more obstacles, Xiao Hua was ready to leave. Just as he was about to rush to the top of the abyss using the water escape technique, trouble appeared again. Under the urging of his transcendence energy, the moment his body moved, an extremely strong repulsive force appeared around him, blocking his escape. His body seemed to be pressed down by a large hand, unable to move at all. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes, looked at the seawater above his head, and circulated his soul power. Sure enough, the Soul Cultivator's flying technique was still effective at the bottom of the sea. When Xiao Hua landed on the mountain peak and looked up, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Xiao Hua naturally knew what the green-robed Xiao Hua saw, but when he saw it himself, he couldn't help but feel shocked. Million Meng Mountains above the 3 continents. There are also Soul Cultivators' inheritances, but these inheritances have already been annihilated, and Million Meng Mountains to be buried under the North Sea. Judging from the difficulty of entering this place, I'm afraid there are not many human cultivators in this world who can enter this place. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked, as he recalled the Shaman Kings of Meng Mountains. At that time, the Shaman King had given Xiao Hua a crystal skull thumb ring. Elder Wu of Hutu Stronghold had told him that the Shaman King wanted to see Xiao Hua, and that the Shaman King was proficient in the art of divine connection. But at that time, Xiao Hua didn't know that there were 3 continents in the world, and he also didn't know that after he returned from Million Meng Mountains to Imperial Thunder Sect, he didn't have the chance to go to Million Meng Mountains again. Could it be that the Shaman King of Million Meng Mountains already knew that he would come to the lost land of another soul cultivator? Xiao Hua's eyes swept across the mountains. The mountains buried deep under the sea were dark and gloomy, and there was an indescribable sense of heaviness and mystery coming from them. When Xiao Hua's eyes fell on the big and small mountains, and the 13 huge stone pillars, he fell into deep thought. Million Meng Mountains had 12 gods. There are 13 huge pillars here, and one of them is standing in the center, while the other 12 are surrounding it. If I'm not mistaken, there should be the ruins of the 12 gods on top of these 12 huge pillars. So, what is on top of this 13th pillar? Xiao Hua thought to himself. Furthermore, there is no luster on top of these big and small mountains, but why is there a luster on top of the mountain next to the 13th pillar? If I want to find out, I should check out the other mountains that don't have any luster. Having made up his mind, Xiao Hua exercised his flying technique and flew toward the nearest mountain. When he landed on the top of the mountain, he saw that the top of the mountain was flat, and there was a simple and unadorned palace, about 1,000 feet in size, standing there. This palace was very similar to the Hutu Palace in Hutu Stronghold. However, this palace had been in ruins for a long time, and was in a complete mess. There were only some huge rocks piled up there. What was special was that when Xiao Hua walked into this palace, there was also a statue of a god on top of the palace, and behind the statue was a huge stone chair. Behind the stone chair was a collapsed stone wall, and there were some traces of green seal script engraved on it. When Xiao Hua saw these ruins, he naturally thought of the Hutu Palace, and the Thunderclap Palace in the Misty Mountain. He rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Could it be that each of these mountains represents the inheritance of a soul cultivator? There is a green seal script engraved in the palace of each mountain. When the soul cultivator ruins were flourishing, just how many soul warriors gathered here? Xiao Hua immediately went back to the mountain and looked for the other palaces in the nearby mountains. The style of each palace was different, but the layout inside was similar. Xiao Hua already knew that his guess was correct, and he couldn't help but look at the mountain next to the central pillar. After all, none of the mountain peaks emitted green light. This meant that the palaces on these mountains were all broken, and the green seal script engraved in them had already disappeared. If Xiao Hua wanted to find the green seal script, he would have to go to this mountain peak. Xiao Hua urged his soul force to protect himself, and slowly flew toward the mountain peak. Fortunately, when Xiao Hua landed on the ground, he saw that the palace was also damaged, and nothing strange happened. Although the palace was damaged, and the statue inside had also collapsed, the stone chair was still in perfect condition. The stone chair faintly emitted waves of soul force that protected the surrounding 300 feet, keeping all the seawater outside of the ripples. Inside the ripples, there was a green seal script engraved on the stone wall that emitted a faint green light. When he got closer, Xiao Hua could clearly see that the green light emitted by the green seal text was very strange. Every strand of light was in the shape of a spiral, and the inside of the spiral was filled with black and white. A kind of faint spatial power leaked out from time to time. This is. Xiao Hua knew that the green seal script was a type of soul technique, but when he saw the strange state of the stone chair, he couldn't help but hesitate. After hesitating for a long time, Xiao Hua released his soul strands and let them fall on the ripples. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, the ripples didn't stop his soul strands at all, and allowed them to fall into the chair. When Xiao Hua's soul strands touched the green seal script with trembling fear, boom! The green seal script emitted a resplendent green light, and it seemed as if it wanted to fly out from the stone wall, and an intense impact followed the soul strands into Xiao Hua's mysterious dark clouds. Good! Xiao Hua's heart leaped with joy, knowing that the green seal script wasn't a trap, but a normal soul technique. With a word of praise, tens of thousands of soul strands rushed out again. Woo-woo! When enough soul strands fell into the green seal script, the entire green seal script escaped from the stone wall and let out a strange groan, and began to decompose in midair. Xiao Hua's soul strands didn't hesitate to touch the decomposed green seal script one by one. In the time it took to eat a meal, the entire green seal script was decomposed into over 300 basic green seal scripts. Other than the strange green seal script from before, this was the green seal script that Xiao Hua had seen formed the most. When all the green seal script was lit up by Xiao Hua, the green seal script suddenly began to frantically dance and combine together. Finally, the complete green seal script began to rotate with a boom sound, and strands of black and white emerged from the green seal script. Under the black and white brilliance, the tadpole-like green seal script began to tumble, swell, and swim towards the depths of space. When the green seal script began to stabilize, a transmission channel appeared in front of Xiao Hua. This is a soul cultivator's transmission channel. Xiao Hua was wild with joy. What a shocking soul technique this is. Just a single green seal script was able to construct the entire transmission channel. This is simply inconceivable. The transmission channel in front of Xiao Hua was naturally not a real transmission channel. The end of the channel was sealed, and after Xiao Hua's joy, the entire transmission channel began to rotate in the opposite direction, and in a moment, it condensed back into the huge green seal script and landed on the stone wall. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent, nor did he dare to leave the palace immediately. He sat down cross-legged, and his consciousness entered the mysterious dark clouds, turning into a jade archive. Xiao Hua began to comprehend the green seal text of the transmission passage. A faint green light flickered between Xiao Hua's eyebrows, like a firefly in the dark night. After a few flickers, it gradually became clear, and a tiny, almost inaudible whirlpool gradually appeared. This whirlpool continued to spin like this. After an unknown amount of time, the whirlpool finally dimmed and the green light disappeared. Xiao Hua thoughtfully opened his eyes and muttered to himself, "This green seal character is the word transmission." This Confucian cultivation technique also has a nice name, South Opposite North Way. Heh. The common people often say that going north in opposite directions is the action of a fool, but the Confucian cultivator's way of going south in opposite directions is indeed the technique of the strong. Unfortunately, this Xiao's soul cultivation realm is still a bit lacking, and I can't recognize a few key green seal characters, so now I can't use the South Opposite North Way technique. However, it seems that these green seal characters are somewhat familiar. If there is no accident, they should be the ones I encountered when I entered the soul cultivator's ruins. When the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body condenses again, I should be able to comprehend those hidden green seal characters. If this Xiao succeeds in cultivating this south-opposite north way technique, then with the help of the soul consciousness imprint, En, this Xiao's soul cultivation primordial spirit is interconnected with the Tao primordial spirit, so there is no need for a soul consciousness imprint. Divine sense imprint and Buddhist sense imprint should also work. With these imprints, this Xiao can create a transmission channel out of thin air, and cross the void to reach the location of the imprint. The more Xiao Hua thought about it, the more proud he became. This way, this Xiao won't have to painstakingly construct a transmission channel. Hey, speaking of which, isn't this soul consciousness imprint similar to the mark in the universal greater shift token? Could it be that my Tao sect's transmission channel is based on the soul cultivator's transmission channel? Chapter 3982. Forget it, who cares who's first? As the saying goes, the one who reaches the apex is the master, and the student surpasses the master. Whoever can execute this spell to the extreme is the one who has the skill. Xiao Hua thought, and then looked outside the palace, at the towering stone pillars that pierced into the sea. Xiao Hua flew out from the palace, but he didn't fly directly to the central stone pillar. Instead, he flew to the outer stone pillar. When Xiao Hua flew to the stone pillar, he could clearly see that it wasn't a stone pillar. It was clearly a huge bone pillar made of white bones. The white bones were like jade, and were not eroded by the seawater at all. When his eyes fell on it, a faint dizziness involuntarily appeared. Xiao Hua didn't dare to look again. His body flew up slowly, and after flying for a while, he finally arrived at the top of the stone pillar. He saw that this was a platform with a radius of several thousand feet, and a tall palace was standing on top of it, intact. Moreover, this palace emitted a faint white color in the sea water. Whether it was the palace door or the pillars, they were all made of white bones. On these white bones, countless strange beast heads and nether beasts were engraved with an unknown method. These nether beasts were vivid and lifelike, and looked extremely terrifying. It was actually the same as the Hutu palace Xiao Hua saw in the Hutu stockade in the Meng Mountains. However, this bone palace was several times larger than the previous Hutu palace. The palace door made of white bones was open, and the palace door that looked like the mouth of a beast was emitting a terrifying aura, as if it would swallow Xiao Hua as soon as he approached it. Xiao Hua's soul sense swept out, but the palace door blocked his soul sense, and he couldn't see the situation inside the palace. Xiao Hua stood in front of the palace door, and after a little hesitation, he lifted his foot and walked in. Similarly, there was nothing unusual at the palace door. After entering the palace, Xiao Hua took a deep breath. There was no sea water in this palace, and it was the same as the ancestral temple of the Hutu stockade, a huge bone palace. There were no pillars in the center of the bone palace. The roof of the palace was made of white bones and skeletons, and the ground was also made of white bones and skeletons. However, the space inside the palace was much larger than what he saw outside. Xiao Hua stood in the hall, almost like an ant. At the head of the hall, there was a huge throne made of bones. It was empty, and there was no statue of a god as Xiao Hua had expected. Behind the throne, there was a bone ball that looked like a full moon quietly floating in the air, not moving at all. This throne of bones. Xiao Hua shifted his gaze away from the bone ball and looked towards the throne of bones. He frowned slightly as he came to a realization. Could it be that the statue of a god was placed there before? The size of this space, this palace. Suddenly, Xiao Hua understood and almost blurted out, could it be that the god and devil puppets from the god and devil blood pool were the god statues enshrined in these bone palaces? The more Xiao Hua thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He immediately flew up into the air and approached the bone sphere. He was filled with anticipation. Maybe this mysterious bone sphere would bring him some unexpected surprises. The bone sphere was very big, about the size of 100 Xiao Hua. Holding the densely packed skeletons on the bone sphere and the seemingly bottomless darkness in the eyes of the skeletons, Xiao Hua released his soul strands. Woo woo. A formless cold wind suddenly blew, and a faint green light emitted from the bone ball. Moreover, as Xiao Hua released even more soul strands, even more green light gradually appeared, until finally, an 8-headed, 8-legged, 8-tailed figure of the heavenly Wu great god appeared outside the bone ball. This is the palace to offer sacrifices to great god of Tian Wu. Xiao Hua thought inwardly. He covered the space with his consciousness and prepared to put the bone sphere into his space. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, although his consciousness covered the bone sphere, this bone sphere seemed to be 10,000 times heavier than metal and wood. Xiao Hua couldn't move it at all. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and withdrew his consciousness. The soul strands began to move, and sure enough, the bone sphere moved a little. Xiao Hua understood. This bone sphere was most likely a soul tool. Only soul strands could put it away. Moreover, this soul tool could only go to the mysterious dark cloud. But Xiao Hua hesitated again. After all, the mysterious dark cloud was very important. If he didn't have full confidence, how could Xiao Hua put this inexplicable soul tool into the mysterious dark cloud? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and released the soul of Little White Dragon. However, just as Little White Dragon's soul appeared in the air, its body seemed to be burned by fire. The dragon's body twitched and it shouted loudly, "Xiao Hua, quickly put me back." Xiao Hua put Little White Dragon away and his consciousness followed in. He hurriedly asked, "Little White, what's going on?" "Sigh, you scared me to death." Little White shouted very nervously, "The aura outside is very strange. It seems like it can kill me at any time. I don't dare to stay in this aura for long. However, this aura is very strong. I feel that if I can stay in this aura for a while, my soul will definitely be more solid. I might even have other gains." "Ari, so that's how it is." Xiao Hua was a little depressed. "I still wanted to put this bone sphere into the soul formation sky. Since you don't even dare to touch it, how can I dare to take it?" "Take it, quickly take it." "Why don't you take it?" Little White almost roared, "Is this a bone sphere? This thing must be an extremely powerful soul tool. If you take it, it will definitely be useful for your cultivation. Furthermore, if this soul tool enters the soul formation sky, I can use it to cultivate. Quickly, quickly, don't hesitate." Aren't you afraid of this bone sphere's aura?" Xiao Hua was a little flabbergasted. Little White urged, "Outside the soul formation sky, I'm naturally afraid. But inside the soul formation sky, I have many soul strands that can resist this aura. Don't say any more, Xiao Hua, quickly take it." "Okay." Xiao Hua nodded and released his soul strands. They wrapped around the bone sphere and pulled it towards his forehead. The bone sphere was naturally as heavy as 10,000 catties, but Xiao Hua also had many soul strands. Under the urging of his soul power, it actually moved little by little. The closer it got to Xiao Hua's forehead, the smaller the bone sphere became. In the end, Xiao Hua waited until the bone ball had shrunk to the size of a thumb before he released his soul bridge. One end of the bridge landed on top of the bone ball while the other end landed on top of the mysterious cloud. Seeing that the cloud was about to open up a passage, Xiao Hua gritted his teeth and used the last of his soul force to drag his soul bridge and the bone ball into the passage. Phew! Xiao Hua let out a long breath and almost collapsed on the ground of the bone palace. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua endured the unspeakable headache and entered the soul formation sky. At this time, he saw that the bone sphere had already turned into a divine statue of the heavenly Wu great god. It stood proudly at the top of the soul formation sky. Countless green rays of light were emitted from the divine statue like sunlight. Although Xiao Bai was afraid of the divine statue, it still dragged the soul cultivator Xiao Hua, who only had a green core left. It did its best to resist the green light of the heavenly Wu great god. Unexpectedly, the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body condensed faster in the green light. In particular, the green light of the heavenly Wu great god seemed to contain something else. When it landed on the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body, a strange feeling arose from the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. Although he didn't know what this feeling was, it was clear that the bone sphere of the heavenly Wu great god was harmless to him. Xiao Hua escaped from the mysterious dark cloud and rested for several days. Then, he went to the nearest bone pillar. It took Xiao Hua more than 2 months to collect all the bone spheres in the 12 bone palaces into the mysterious dark cloud. Inside the soul formation sky, the 12 bone spheres transformed into 12 gods. They were like 12 stars that surrounded Xiao Hua and Xiao Bai. Layers of green light covered the two of them. Xiao Hua trembled violently, and Xiao Bai's dragon body also swelled. Xiao Bai even urged the soul strands to turn into clouds in front of him to protect him. From the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body, Xiao Hua's understanding entered Xiao Hua's body. It seemed to be some kind of soul technique, but also some kind of curse. In short, it was somewhat strange. Xiao Hua closed his eyes for a long time, but he couldn't understand it. He simply ignored it. Looking at Xiao Bai's painful and happy appearance, he withdrew from the mysterious dark cloud. Then, Xiao Hua urged the flying technique to rush to the last bone pillar. This last bone pillar was several times taller than the other 12 bone pillars. But strangely, there was no white bone palace on top of this bone pillar. Instead, there was a rhombus-shaped crystal floating in the air. The crystal was the size of a fist, and there was another thing embedded in it. When Xiao Hua saw the thing inside the crystal, he couldn't help but exclaim, How is this possible? After saying that, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the crystal skull thumb ring that was given to him by the Witch King of Meng Mountains. Xiao Hua held the thumb ring in his hand and looked inside the crystal again. There was another crystal skull thumb ring in front of him. The two crystal skull thumb rings were exactly the same. Buzz, buzz. Xiao Hua took out the thumb ring. The thumb ring immediately emitted a dark green brilliance. The thumb ring inside the crystal also emitted a brilliance, but the crystal still didn't move. Xiao Hua placed the thumb ring on the crystal, but the crystal still didn't move. Xiao Hua then released his soul strands, but the crystal still didn't move. Moreover, he couldn't drag it. Even when Xiao Hua urged the hammer of divine will and waved the wishful staff, he still couldn't cause any damage to the crystal. In the end, Xiao Hua was like a defeated rooster. He stared at the thumb ring inside the crystal dejectedly, his eyes full of frustration. Damn it, this Xiao is going to waste time with you. I don't believe that there is something in this world that this Xiao can't get. Then, Xiao Hua sat cross-legged in front of the crystal, closed his eyes, and meditated. Every time he thought of a method, he would immediately use it on the crystal. For more than a month, Xiao Hua failed again and again. He didn't know how many methods he had used. Ouch! In the end, the green-robed Xiao Hua couldn't stand it anymore and complained secretly, Damn it, fellow Daoist, why don't you try your blood? This blood-refining method can be used by all races. Isn't it just the power of blood in the bloodline? Chapter 3983. Temph. You only know how to waste I's blood essence. Xiao Hua snorted angrily, but he felt a little embarrassed in his heart. In the early years, Xiao Hua didn't know how precious his blood essence was, so he used a lot of it. But after he obtained the blood drop paradise, Xiao Hua rarely used his blood essence. Last time, in the blood pool of gods and devils, Xiao Hua used 9 drops of his blood essence all at once, causing him to be unable to recover. Therefore, Xiao Hua never thought of using his blood essence. But since it had come to this point, blood essence might be a method. Xiao Hua had no choice but to give it a try. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, when the essence blood landed on the crystal, the essence blood flowed for a moment, then seeped into the crystal. The crystal was silent for a few breaths of time, then countless strange green seal characters flashed within the crystal. Within these green seal characters, the crystal began to melt, and the crystal skull's thumb ring emerged from the crystal. Looking at Xiao Hua's essence blood, there was a trace of Xiao Hua's essence blood that had landed on the crystal skull. However, the crystal skull seemed to be untainted, and it did not allow the essence blood to seep into it. The trace of blood slid on the crystal skull and fell back into the crystal. Xiao Hua raised his hand, and the crystal skull thumb ring fell into his hand. With one in each hand, Xiao Hua looked left and right. These 2 thumb rings were exactly the same, and he couldn't see any difference. Looks like. Xiao Hua thought to himself, if I want to know the origin of this thumb ring, or its use, I can only find out when I meet the Shaman King of Meng Mountains in the future. And all of a sudden, Xiao Hua quivered again, a crazy thought uncontrollably flashed through his mind. The Shaman King has the ability to connect to the gods, since he gifted this crystal skull to me, he must know that I can meet with him. Now that I'm in the hidden immortal continent, if I meet him, doesn't that mean I have to return to the Dawn Rain continent? Since he knows that I can meet him, Does that mean I have to return to the Dawn Rain continent? When he thought of returning to the Dawn Rain continent, Xiao Hua's heart was burning with passion. The longing for Fairy Hong Xia, the longing for Imperial Thunder Sect, and the longing for Ju Xia and the others, involuntarily surged up like a tide. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua's mood calmed down. He mocked himself inwardly, damn it, even if I can return, who knows when I can return? Who knows how to return? Forget it, don't think so much, cultivate diligently, I'll think about it when I have the chance. After Xiao Hua put the 2 crystal skull rings into the space, his gaze fell on the crystal. At this time, the crystal had already returned to its original state, but it was now empty. Xiao Hua's drop of essence blood floated on the surface of the crystal. It seems like the crystal didn't absorb the essence blood, but instead used the essence blood to see if Xiao Hua was qualified to take out the crystal skull rings. Then to check, he to go to the other to search to find to use some of the places. Is to. There to the two to find some place to find. To find. T to find to find. To be to find to find. To. And. To find could find. Some. To T to find. To the left to test to find found. Seeing this, Xiao Hua knew that although the Soul Cultivator's ruins were vast, the most important thing was the 13 bone pillars. There was nothing useful in other places. Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't plan to look any further. Activating his flight technique, Xiao Hua flew towards the mountain peak closest to the central bone pillar. Back when he was comprehending the going south, going north, going south, going south, going north, going south, going south, going north, going south, going south, going south, going south, going south, Xiao Hua had already figured out that there was a green seal character engraved on the stone wall of the palace. Furthermore, there was an extremely large amount of green light radiating from the palace. When he thought about the numerous whirlpools and tiny teleportation tunnels in the Forbidden Spring Ocean, Xiao Hua knew that if he wanted to leave this place, he would have to rely on the green light radiating from the palace. As for which green light he would use to leave this place, Xiao Hua wasn't sure. Speaking of luck, Xiao Hua believed that with the dragon vein and dragon qi in his body, if he said that his luck was second in the hidden immortal continent, no one would dare to say that they were first. Flying to the top of the mountain, Xiao Hua looked around. The soul strand between his eyebrows moved like a big hand to grab one of the green lights. Suddenly, another cluster of green light emerged from the palace and covered Xiao Hua's body in a flash. As soon as the soul strand came in contact with the green light, it immediately fluctuated violently. Green seal characters that looked like ants surged out of the green light and tumbled to form a simple transmission channel. Amidst the grey-white spatial folds, Xiao Hua's body disappeared from the Soul Cultivator's ruins. It was impossible to say how many years had passed since any human or demon had appeared in the ruins of the Soul Cultivator. Suddenly, a huge rumbling sound rang out from the depths of the abyss where Xiao Hua had been first smashed by the green seal text. Immediately afterward, a shattered ship, as well as countless pieces of flesh and bones, emerged from the depths of the sea and fell straight into the abyss. The entire mountain peak trembled slightly, but after a moment, it went completely silent. When Xiao Hua fell into the transmission channel, he immediately felt that something was wrong, because the transmission channel was not complete and was filled with the tearing force of space. Xiao Hua activated the Dharma embodiment technique and took out the Grand Chenkuan teleportation token at the same time. Daoist magic treasures were indeed wonderful. As soon as the Grand Chenkuan teleportation token was taken out, the space in the transmission channel immediately stabilized. At least, the tearing force of space a few feet around Xiao Hua had weakened. In just half a cup of tea's time, light appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. Then, a strong pressure appeared around his body. Xiao Hua's transcendence golden body flashed extremely brightly. Finally, with a sharp whistle, Xiao Hua's figure flew out of the transmission channel like a meteor. Roar! Xiao Hua's figure appeared from the teleportation channel. He immediately let out a long laugh and used the wind escape technique to leave the channel. After Xiao Hua flew out 1,000 feet, he looked to his left and saw that he was at the periphery of the Forbidden Spring Sea. There were green lightning bolts and whirlpools of different sizes on the sea surface and in space. With a smile on his face, Xiao Hua released his soul consciousness to explore. Then, he took out the sea map of the North Sea Dragon Palace. After a while, Xiao Hua clapped his hands and laughed. Good. This Xiao's luck is really unparalleled in the world. Although this is not the place where this Xiao entered the Soul Cultivator ruins, it is still at the edge of the sea map. This Xiao only needs to follow the map and fly out of the Forbidden Spring Sea. However, even though Xiao Hua had a sea map, and even though this place was already the periphery of the Forbidden Spring Sea, with Xiao Hua's sense of direction, it was still somewhat difficult for him to leave the Forbidden Spring Sea. After waiting for a day and a night, Xiao Hua, who was in a rather sorry state, barely managed to squeeze out of the two whirlpools. Looking at the boundless blue water in front of him, and the faint thunderbolts and whirlpools behind him, Xiao Hua activated the water escape technique and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Xiao Hua was afraid that even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't tell others about his experience in the Forbidden Spring Sea. He really couldn't afford to lose face. Half an hour later, Xiao Hua saw a small island on the surface of the sea. After thinking for a while, he waved his hand and took out Aosha's corpse. After scanning it with his divine sense, he doubtfully waved his hand and peeled off a dragon scale from Aosha's tail. Xiao Hua looked around and said with a bitter smile, "Everyone says that the human race is cunning, but look at the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace." This dragon shell was actually inserted into Aosha's body. If this Xiao didn't use the soul summoning technique to explore Aosha's soul, how could I find this dragon shell so easily? Maybe I was really deceived by him and thought that the dragon shell was lost in the Scarlet Storm. There was naturally Jiang Hong in Longbei. However, Jiang Hong was not in human form at this time. Instead, she was a small dragon about 10 feet long. The small dragon was snow white and looked very crystal clear. On the pure white dragon body, there was a purple-red chain binding Jiang Hong. Jiang Hong's eyes were closed, and her dragon body was stiff. She didn't move at all, no different from being dead. Xiao Hua didn't dare to act rashly. He searched the dragon shell again, but didn't find anything special. After thinking for a while, he first put Aosha into the space, and then pulled Liu Yi out of the space. Liu Yi didn't have time to greet Xiao Hua before he saw Jiang Hong. A strange expression appeared on his face, and he hesitantly bowed and asked, "Disciple greets master. Is this little Yun?" Xiao Hua saw Liu Yi's strange expression and couldn't help but think of the snake spirit and the old scholar in the Feather Spirit Bay. He said with a smile, "Yes, this is little Yun. She is the little princess of the heavenly abode river, Jiang Hong." Alas! Liu Yi sighed, and his gaze fell on Jiang Hong's dragon body again. He said, "Although Disciple has always been fantasizing about meeting little Yun, I still didn't expect that we would meet in such a way. This is little Yun's original body, right?" "Indeed. Since little Yun is a dragon of the heavenly abode river, this is naturally her original body." Xiao Hua nodded. "However, master can't be sure if this is little Yun for the time being." "Yes." Liu Yi's answer surprised Xiao Hua. "Disciple can feel that this should be little Yun." "You can feel it?" Xiao Hua asked in surprise. "Yes, I can't explain it." Liu Yi looked up and down at the strange race's body that was much bigger than him. After waiting for a moment, Xiao Hua whispered, "What did you see?" "I didn't expect Yun Er's original body to be so beautiful." Liu Yi stared at the dragon body and praised. "Ah!" Xiao Hua blinked his eyes and shook his head vigorously. He didn't expect Liu Yi to say such words. "Isn't it? Master." Liu Yi raised his head strangely. When Disciple saw the dragon body, he was only surprised and shocked. But thinking that this is Yun Er, Disciple felt that she was very beautiful. "I didn't expect the demon race to be so beautiful." Chapter 3984. Xiao Hua was completely defeated. He firmly believed that even if Liu Yi was lying on top of this dragon body, Liu Yi would not be scared to death by Jiang Hong. "It's like this, Disciple." Xiao Hua recounted everything Aosha had told him, as well as everything he'd done. "In the end," he said, "although I've already rescued Jiang Hong, She's been imprisoned by the North Sea Dragon Palace. Perhaps the chains binding her are easy to break, but I don't dare to rashly attempt to break through the North Sea Dragon Palace's demonic arts. You still have to wait for me to send her back to Yuling Bay and see what to do with the Heavenly Abode River. Actually, the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace was attacked, and I was lucky to escape. As for the dragons of the Heavenly Abode River, I really don't know what their fate is. Then, Master, Liu Yi said with a smile, do you think I am the key to awakening Xiao Yun? Can this disciple kiss little Yun awake? Pa. Xiao Hua reached out and hit Liu Yi's head. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you think Xiao Yun ate an apple? I don't think it's Xiao Yun who has a problem, it's you. You've heard too many stories, and you've gone mad. Liu Yi touched his head and said, Master, I was just joking with you. Since the most difficult thing has been done, you don't have to be too anxious to wake Xiao Yun up. Let's wait until there is an opportunity in the future. Now, I understand that little Yun is a member of the dragon tribe and the little princess of the Heavenly Abode River. I'm afraid that her responsibilities far exceed my expectations. To be able to meet her, I'm already satisfied. Let's talk about the future in the future. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, how can you just meet her? Let's put Xiao Yun in the Kunlun Wonderland. You take good care of her. If possible, you can ask Fuji Wen. He has some experience in this area. Oh, what experience does senior brother Fu have? Liu Yi didn't understand. Naturally, Xiao Hua wouldn't directly tell Liu Yi about the knockout powder. He just chuckled and took Liu Yi and Jiang Hong into the space. At this moment, Jiang Hong was no different from a naked human woman. As for what to do, that was Liu Yi's problem. As for whether or not these things had anything to do with eating apples, Xiao Hua didn't have to worry about it. Then, Xiao Hua looked at the long bay in his hand. There were indeed some things from the North Sea Dragon Palace inside, but how could he dare to go to the North Sea Dragon Palace? This time, he had offended the North Sea Dragon Palace. It was already good enough that Ao Jing didn't ask the North Sea Dragon Palace's Dragon King to kill him. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua looked at the sun, thought about the direction, then turned into a gust of wind and flew in the direction he thought was right. However, after flying for an hour, Xiao Hua suddenly felt a faint green thunderbolt appear in the distant horizon. Moreover, layers of spatial aura uncontrollably overflowed. Xiao Hua was startled and hurriedly raised his head to look at the sky. Previously, the scorching sun was overhead, but now, it was covered in dense clouds. How could he still recognize the direction? Motherfucker! Xiao Hua cursed angrily. Needless to say, he must have flown until he lost his way, and returned to the vicinity of the Forbidden Spring Ocean. How can this be? Why don't I ask Fujiwen to come out? Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, rumble. A loud sound of water came from dozens of miles away, and a water column shot straight into the sky. Then, a muffled dragon roar sounded from the water column, and a blood-red dragon nearly 100 feet long rose up from the water column. After accumulating power, it bared its fangs and brandished its claws, then pounced into the water. Heh! Isn't this the bloodline Dharma body of the true dragon bloodline? Is this Ao Zhantian? Xiao Hua was shocked. He hurriedly released his divine sense, and urged his body to fly toward the water column. Before his divine sense could sweep across the water column, a sharp howl sounded, and a figure flew out from the water. This figure was wearing a suit of armor, but the armor had already been shattered, and the flesh on the body was covered in blood. Blood was still flowing from the lacerations. Looking at the bloodline Dharma body that had just charged into the water, Xiao Hua saw two pitch-black tentacles reaching out from the blood dragon's body. Wisps of demonic clouds flowed from the tentacles, causing the blood dragon to become extremely dim. Looking at the human figure that had just appeared, Xiao Hua also saw a huge gash on his face, and half of his face was covered in blood. However, Xiao Hua could see clearly that this was Ao Zhantian. Roar! The situation was truly dire, and before Xiao Hua had a chance to say anything, another enraged roar erupted from the bottom of the ocean. A tentacle that was several dozen feet in size hurtled directly toward Ao Zhantian's chest like a heavenly staff. There were small claws protruding from the tip of the tentacle that were flashing with crimson light. If this tentacle hit Enchanting, it would probably dig out his heart in an instant. Enchanting's figure retreated rapidly, and a 3 feet long nascent soul silently appeared above his head. The nascent soul held a dragon halberd in its hand, and with a wave of the halberd, it sliced off several feet of the tentacle. However, where the tentacle fell, a wave of pitch-black ink covered the sky and fell toward Enchanting's body and nascent soul. Enchanting's blood-red nascent soul seemed to be afraid of the ink, and it hurriedly hid in his body. Behind Enchanting's retreating figure, another pitch-black tentacle silently appeared. This tentacle was hidden in the splashing waves, and it was very well hidden. "Brother Ao, be careful." Seeing that Enchanting was fleeing in a hurry, and didn't even notice the tentacle behind him, Xiaohua was shocked. He instantly teleported to Enchanting's side. Xiaohua. Happiness came too suddenly, and Enchanting almost didn't dare to believe it. Pa! While Enchanting was shocked, the tentacle had already activated the wave of water, and it slammed into Enchanting's back. Xiaohua didn't have time to reply to Enchanting. He waved his hand, and a bolt of lightning like a flying sword streaked across the sky, quickly striking the tentacle. Zilla. A section of the tentacle that was over 100 feet long was chopped off by the lightning. Pu. The ink in the tentacle splashed out, and without any suspense, it landed on Enchanting's back. At this moment, Enchanting finally came to his senses. He roared angrily, and light flashed around his body, and he suddenly flew forward. Although it couldn't compare to Xiaohua's teleportation, it was still abnormally fast when he used all his strength. Although Enchanting was fast, the ink wasn't slow either. In fact, Xiaohua even felt that this ink was a method that the sea beast used to attack its enemies. Zilla. A chaotic sound rang out, and a few drops of ink had already landed on Enchanting's back. When Xiaohua heard the sound, he looked at Enchanting's back again. The ink quickly seeped into the exposed skin outside of the battle armor, and a patch of blackness mixed with blood and pus spread out. Enchanting's face contorted from the pain. He waved his hand, and a large patch of flesh fell to the ground, and clean blood seeped out again. When he looked at Enchanting's face again, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Woo-woo. A sound like a tsunami came from the bottom of the sea, and a 1,000-feet-long water pillar shot towards Xiaohua. There was also another tentacle in the water pillar. Moreover, as the water pillar shot out, the surface of the sea bubbled, and a sea beast that was over 1,000 feet long rushed out. Fight! How could Xiaohua be afraid of this sea beast? With a wave of his hand, the seal of overturning the sea flew out, and under the stimulation of his transcendence energy, it turned into a seal that was over 1,000 feet long. Layers of illusory images smashed down like huge mountains. The first layer of illusory images sent the water pillar flying, and even the tentacle rapidly retreated. Then, the second and third layers of illusory images landed on the sea beast's body. The sea beast was similar to a squid, and there were dozens of tentacles on its body. Every time the tentacles moved, the sound of waves would be heard. Moreover, there were also sharp barbs on the tentacles, and they looked very sharp. The sea beast had 4 eyes, one on each side of its head. There was also a strange sarcoma on the top of its head, and this sarcoma was faintly shining. Seeing that the seal of overturning the sea was so powerful, the sea beast's tentacles moved in succession. Woo-woo. Not only did the seawater condense into blocks and rush into the air, but even the water attribute Yuan Qi of heaven and earth rushed into the blocks of water, wanting to resist Xiaohua's seal of overturning the sea. What was special was that the sea beast had too many tentacles, and at the same time, 7 or 8 of them shot out from under Xiaohua's body like giant pythons. Daoist Master Xiao, be careful. Enchanting stood in the air, and he had already taken a pill. The new wound on his back was starting to heal. He knew that Xiaohua's cultivation was very high, but he couldn't help but remind him, this thing is called the water rhinoceros. Most of these tentacles are soft, and there is poison hidden inside. There are also a few tentacles that are extremely tough, and these tentacles can't even be damaged by ordinary magic treasures. Most importantly, before Enchanting could finish, The 7 or 8 tentacles had already landed in front of Xiao Hua. The barbs on the tentacles shone with a pitch-black light, and they whistled through the air. Whoosh! Xiao Hua's body didn't move at all. With a wave of his sleeve, the soaring dragon shears turned into a golden light and flew out. It was like a butcher's knife, and all the tentacles were cut in half. Of course, it was just as Enchanting said. When one of the tentacles came into contact with the soaring dragon shears, it actually let out a clang sound. However, this tentacle still wasn't a match for the soaring dragon shears. Woo! At this moment, the seal of overturning the sea once again displayed its might. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 100 li of the seal of overturning the sea beast rushed over, and with boundless power, it fiercely smashed towards the water rhinoceros. Roar! A loud sound that made Xiao Hua feel a little dizzy came from the water rhinoceros's body. Then, to Xiao Hua's surprise, the sarcoma on the water rhinoceros's head flashed with a water-blue brilliance, and rings of light suddenly formed, and rushed towards the seal of overturning the sea. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and the seal of overturning the sea was slightly flipped over from the impact. The coiling dragon's body was slightly distorted, and the water rhinoceros was smashed to the bottom of the sea. Even the water around the water rhinoceros was smashed by the seal of overturning the sea. Seeing that Xiao Hua's magic treasure was actually so powerful, Enchanting was flabbergasted, and he swallowed back the words he wanted to say. Chapter 3985. Although the sea beast named Aquarino had yet to transform, its intelligence was not inferior to those demonic beasts that had transformed. Seeing that it had met a tough opponent and was smashed to the bottom of the sea, the sarcoma on its head once again produced a water-blue halo. This time, it was different from the previous time. The halo spread out in circles, and with a strange fluctuation, the Aquarino was actually going to use the water escape technique in the sea. Daoist Master Xiao! Enchanting shouted, "Quick! Don't let it escape. This sea beast is the prey that I've chosen this time." Oh! Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. He rubbed his hands and several rays of light fell into the sea, instantly sealing the area within a few miles. The water rhinoceros frantically waved its tentacles, and the tumor on its head moved again and again. Several light circles appeared one after another, but its several 100-feet-long body couldn't even move half a foot. Enchanting opened his mouth slightly, wanting to say something, but in the end, he shook his head with a bitter smile. He flew over and bowed. "Daoist Master Xiao, it's only been 10 years. Your cultivation has become even more unfathomable. I don't know what to say. Hehe, it's just some rare fortuitous encounters. It's nothing." Xiao Hua waved his hand modestly. Enchanting replied sourly, "Just some fortuitous encounters?" Daoist Master Xiao worshipped true monarch Qingyuan and defeated 100,000 immortal soldiers. How can this be explained by some fortuitous encounters? Let's not talk about this. Xiao Hua smiled as he looked at the water rhinoceros in the sea and said, "It's better to be early than early. I've been feeling guilty for missing my appointment with Daoist Ao. Who would have thought that we would meet here today? Daoist Master Xiao not only saved me again, but also helped me complete the selection. I have to say, Daoist Master Xiao is my lucky star." Enchanting sighed with emotion before Xiao Hua could finish. Xiao Hua smiled and asked again, "Your selection mission is to kill the water rhinoceros? No wonder you're clearly no match for the water rhinoceros, but still want to tangle with it. There's no need to kill it." Enchanting knew that Xiao Hua was a kind person and said with a smile, "I just need to take the Shiting treasure on its head." "Oh, that's it." Xiao Hua looked at the tumor on its head and shook his head. "This Shiting treasure is the water rhinoceros's life. Taking it is no different from killing it." "That is true," Enchanting replied. "However, after the rhinoceros treasure is plucked, it will be born again after 1,000 years. The water rhinoceros just needs to hide for 1,000 years." 1,000 years? Xiao Hua looked at the aquamarine scar on the water rhinoceros's forehead. This Shiting Bao was born from the water rhinoceros's body. Chopping off the top would not kill it. However, looking at the water rhinoceros's crazy appearance, he could not help but frown. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out a rejuvenation pill from the space. He threw it into the water rhinoceros's mouth and said in a low voice, "Immortal friend, don't blame me. After all, your Shi Tingbao is useful. After I take it, I will give it to you. Perhaps it will be useful for your cultivation." Daoist. Ao Zhantian smiled bitterly. In his eyes, Xiao Hua's actions were even more pedantic than the Buddhist disciples. Although the water rhinoceros was born with divine abilities, it is already at the 4th grade of essence force like me. However, it does not have the intelligence of the 1,000 demons sacred realm. How can it understand a Daoist talking to it? Xiao Hua smiled and handed the Shi Tingbao to Ao Zhantian. Whether it understands or not is its problem. Whether I say it or not is my problem. All right. Ao Zhantian carefully put the Shi Tingbao away. Ao. At this moment, under the water, there was a faint flash of lightning. The water rhinoceros actually stretched out its tentacles and let out a low roar. The tentacles' movements looked very gentle. Ao Zhantian was shocked again. He did not understand what kind of pill Xiao Hua gave the water rhinoceros. Go. Xiao Hua naturally did not understand the water rhinoceros's voice. With a wave of his sleeve, he removed the seal. The water rhinoceros bobbed up and down on the surface of the water a few times before obediently sinking to the bottom of the sea. Damn it! Ao Zhantian did not know whether to laugh or cry. This is the first time I have seen such a well-behaved water rhinoceros. If Daoist had come a few hours earlier, the other immortals would not have died at its hand. Oh, you and the others are all participating in the selection? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Then, what about the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace? Are they nearby? Ao Zhantian nodded. That's right. We are all participating in the selection. The one who can get the Shi Tingbao wins and the others lose. As for the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace, they have already returned after leading us here. Ao Zhantian then explained the selection. Ao Zhantian waited for a long time, but Xiao Hua did not come. Helpless, he could only follow the dragon boat to the North Sea Dragon Palace. After the humans and dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace had gathered, they would be sent to different selection locations by the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace. After the selection candidates were selected, these candidates would bring the selection certificate to the designated location on the Dragon Island. As for how many humans and monsters would pass, the North Sea Dragon Palace would not ask too much. After all, they only cared about the candidates of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Speaking of Ao Zhantian, there were 3 scholarly cultivators and 2 monsters with him. The 6 of them did not know what their mission was at first. Only after arriving here did they realize that they had to obtain the Shi Tingbao. All 6 of them knew how powerful the water rhinoceros was. The water rhinoceros could hide in the sea with the help of the Shi Tingbao, making it extremely difficult for humans and monsters to detect. The 6 of them searched for a long time and finally found traces of the water rhinoceros. After killing one of the demons, the 5 of them tried their best to trap the water rhinoceros. However, just as they were about to kill it, they encountered another change. The spring-cleansing Forbidden Sea suddenly expanded several times and covered them and the water rhinoceros in the Forbidden Sea. The water rhinoceros seemed to frequently enter and exit the Forbidden Spring Ocean. It took advantage of this rare opportunity to kill the last monster and scholarly cultivator before severely injuring Ao Zhantian. The other 2 scholarly cultivators could not avoid the whirlpool in time and were dragged away by the green light. Ao Zhantian did not know whether they were torn apart or teleported somewhere else. In the end, after the Forbidden Spring Ocean shrank, Ao Zhantian tried to escape in order to save his life. However, the water rhinoceros gave chase. Ao Zhantian took pills as he fled. When he felt that he had recovered a little, he began to attack again. However, he was still no match for the water rhinoceros. If Xiao Hua had not appeared, he would have been torn apart by the water rhinoceros. After hearing Ao Zhantian's words, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. The fighting in this world never stops. It's not just you and the water rhinoceros. It seems, there are also secret fights between you. Ari, indeed. Ao Zhantian smiled bitterly. There is only one Shi Tingbao, 3 scholarly cultivators, and 2 monsters in their own alliance. If I had not gotten close to the two monsters and needed my help to kill the water rhinoceros, I would have been killed by them long ago. This selection is much more difficult than before. Now that fellow Daoist has obtained the pass to enter Dragon Island, I have fulfilled my promise. Xiao Hua smiled. I just don't know, can I still go to Dragon Island with fellow Daoist? Xiao Hua had originally planned to go to Dragon Island with Enchanting. Now that they had coincidentally bumped into each other, he naturally had to ask. Especially when he heard that the dragon generals of the North Sea Dragon Palace were not nearby. His enmity with the North Sea Dragon Palace would not be discovered by the dragon tribe. Of course you can. Enchanting raised his brows. When I was reporting to Long Ce, I had already reported your name to him, Ayo. Xiao Hua hurriedly asked, fellow Daoist, you didn't report my name, did you? Hihi, of course not. Enchanting did not know that Xiao Hua had already offended the North Sea Dragon Palace. He thought that Xiao Hua was worried about the Immortal Palace. He smiled and said, fellow Daoist, you are my follower. Of course, you are only a cultivator of the Dao sect. However, there is no need for you to worry. Once you reach Dragon Island, even the Immortal Palace will not be able to do anything to you. Xiao Hua smiled and did not explain. He said, then can we go to Dragon Island now? Of course not. Enchanting replied, I've obtained the right to enter Dragon Island, but I haven't decided where I'll be going to train on Dragon Island. Furthermore, we can only wait for the dragon tribe to arrive at the designated location on Dragon Island. How can we go directly to Dragon Island? All right. Xiao Hua nodded. Then let's go. All right. Enchanting was in an extremely good mood. This was the first time he had obtained the right to enter Dragon Island. It was not that he did not have the opportunity to enter before. However, there were very few cultivators of the Dao sect with the dragon tribe bloodline. He was always pushed aside by other Confucian cultivators or monsters. Today, he could finally hold his head high. Then, Enchanting raised his hand and took out a flying boat. He said respectfully, Daoist Master Xiao, please, hehe, I am your follower. This flying boat should be controlled by me, right? Xiao Hua stepped onto the flying boat and asked with a smile. Enchanting waved his hand and said, everyone knows that I am a follower. There is no need to hide it. Just give them some face in front of the Dragon Island's dragon clan. As you wish. Xiao Hua sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. He seemed to be meditating. Enchanting wanted to ask something, but when he saw this, he did not say anything. Xiao Hua's consciousness entered the space. What greeted him was a mountain of white bones that was as large as a mountain. It was green-robed Xiao Hua. He had taken out the Kunlun mirror and piled up all the treasures in it in a desolate place. Fellow Daoist green-robed. Seeing this, Jade Archive Xiao Hua said helplessly, you can just take these treasures from the bottom of the sea. Why did you take so many bones? Chapter 3986. Hee. Green-robed Xiao Hua waved his hand, and some damaged or rusted unknown magic weapons appeared in his hand. Even more bones were thrown to the side. When he looked at the collected treasures with a smile, he said, who knows if these bones are useful or not? Didn't you see that under the immortal beheading stage, the bones you casually picked up have already become a monster with 3 heads and 6 arms? Even you didn't dare to put the last triangular blood bone on it. Perhaps this poor Daoist can also piece together a monster from these bones. How is that possible? Jade Archive Xiao Hua said with a wry smile, these bones were obviously lost in the Soul Cultivator ruins. How high can their cultivation be? Green-robed Xiao Hua's neck stiffened, and he retorted, even if these bones are useless, fellow Daoist Soul Cultivator has already obtained the Soul Cultivator inheritance. In the future, these bones will be useful in his hands. Oh, fellow Daoist, don't forget, don't you want to repair the Nether Passage mirror? Don't you still need these bones? Okay. Xiao Hua nodded, in that case, I still have to thank you. You're welcome, this is what I should do. Green-robed Xiao Hua's tail curled up. There are really many things in the Soul Cultivator ruins. In order to avoid the situation where you lost the Kunlun mirror fragment last time, I decided to search slowly. Jade Archive Xiao Hua said with displeasure, Fellow Daoist seems to have mentioned the Kunlun mirror fragment more than once, right? I mentioned it in the past, I mentioned it now, and I will mention it again in the future. It is necessary to guard against mistakes and not let you make the mistake of being empirically careless. Green-robed Xiao Hua's words were one after another. What about the thunderbolt technique? You don't seem to have finished comprehending it yet, right? Jade Archive Xiao Hua asked again. Fellow Daoist, don't pick up sesame seeds and throw away watermelons, making a fool of yourself. Does fellow Daoist think that the thunderbolt technique can be comprehended in 100 or 1,000 years? Green-robed Xiao Hua asked with a smile. If you don't take a few steps, you won't be able to reach 1,000 miles. Even if it takes 10,000 years to comprehend, it still has to be done little by little. Jade Archive Xiao Hua knew what the green-robed Xiao Hua was thinking and immediately replied. Green-robed Xiao Hua made another move and took out a diamond-shaped box from the pile of bones. He looked around and said, I know that you are jealous of Ai's wisdom and farsightedness. Both times, I have done things extremely well and picked up a big bargain for you and me. Forget it, forget it. Looking at the narcissistic green-robed Xiao Hua, the Jade Archive Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, do as you wish. Sort these things according to your wishes. If your disciples can use them, then use them. Leave the rest for the Fortune Gate's disciples on the soaring Dragon Mountain range. I know. Seeing that Xiao Hua no longer cared about the Jade Archive, the green-robed Xiao Hua smiled. I have decided, Ai's sect will also be called the Fortune Gate. Picking up the wisdom of others, can't you make your own Lei-Tang sect? Jade Archive Xiao Hua curled his lips and replied. Green-robed Xiao Hua scratched his head and said with a smile, fellow Daoist Confucian cultivator, and I thought of many names, but none of them fit Ai's meaning, haha. Jade Archive Xiao Hua laughed. He knew that the two primordial spirits were arguing back and forth in the space. Each of them came up with hundreds of names, but none of them could convince the other. In the end, they could only use the Fortune Gate as the name. Is the sect formed now? Although Jade Archive Xiao Hua knew about the changes in the Fortune Gate as soon as he entered the space, he still asked in a low voice. Green-robed Xiao Hua seemed to like Jade Archive Xiao Hua's respect, and replied, good to let fellow Daoist know, the Fortune Gate is already in its embryonic form. However, these children are still young, so let them cultivate first. When their aptitudes are determined, some disciples will be assigned to manage the sect's internal affairs. Right now, I can't see anything. Indeed. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded. He looked at the space and said, normally, this space is different from the outside, so the time inside should also be different from the outside. However, because Ai's physical body is outside, the time inside the space is the same as the hidden immortal continent outside. If you and I are strong enough, we can control the time inside this space and speed up the disciples' cultivation. That's time fellow Daoist. Green-robed Xiao Hua curled his lips and said, unless you have a great divine ability, you can't control it. Right now, you and I can't even comprehend the power of space, so how can we dare to covet time? If you have this free time, why don't you use it to comprehend the Crimson Infant technique and quickly match your meridians with your nascent soul realm? Otherwise, if you and I cultivate to the crossing tribulation stage in the future, it will be even more troublesome. I know this. I already have some ideas. It won't be long before I can truly advance to the spirit severing stage after taking the dark breaking pill. Jade Archive Xiao Hua replied. Then, he looked at Xiao Guo, who was excitedly refining pills, and asked, how did Xiao Guo's alchemy technique advance so quickly? Damn it, don't mention this little guy. Green-robed Xiao Hua gnashed his teeth in hatred. You taught him some alchemy techniques. Every day, after taking care of the spiritual herbs, he would refine pills. You also know that he's not much slower than me in taking care of the spiritual herbs, so he has a lot of time to refine pills. This alchemy is like his beloved game. He plays it every day, all the time, all the time, all the time. Later, when you stopped coming, he felt bored and came to bother I every day. I was annoyed to death by him, so I simply taught him all my alchemy techniques. So that's how it is. Jade Archive Xiao Hua smiled and said, this Xiao Guo is also very talented. It seems that my Fortune Gate won't lack pills in the future. Yes, you're right. Green-robed Xiao Hua nodded. Currently, my Fortune Gates pills are all produced by Xiao Guo. What about that Dai? Jade Archive Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. Green-robed Xiao Hua's face showed a rare serious expression as he replied, "This duckling is different from other spiritual insects. She should have an inheritance. After going through the separation of yin and yang in the space, her entire body has changed. She seems to be completely different from when she first entered the space. The aura on her body is increasingly similar to that of the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress, and there are even signs of it surpassing her. It seems that her presence here is also a troublesome matter. What? Is fellow Daoist going to ruthlessly destroy a flower?" Green-robed Xiao Hua asked with a smile. "What about that 7-colored conch? That thing didn't change much. After all, it didn't go through the separation of yin and yang." Green-robed Xiao Hua stopped smiling and replied, "However, the aura inside it seems to be extremely powerful. If fellow Daoist wants to deal with it, it's better to deal with it as soon as possible like the duckling. I want to deal with it as soon as possible." Jade Archive Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "But how do I deal with it? Throw it in the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm?" "That's true." Green-robed Xiao Hua's heart was filled with sorrow. When this 7-colored conch entered the space, the deity statue flew out from the Empress's restriction. Presumably, this thing is related to the Empress. Moreover, this deity statue is also very mysterious. It's different from the 12 great deities. If you don't find out the truth, I'm afraid you won't be satisfied, right? Of course I won't be satisfied. Jade Archive Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes. Shang Huaming's sect is very strange. Now that I think about it, there are a lot of strange things. Especially in the cultivation method, there are faint traces of the demon race. This deity statue should also be hiding a big secret. I'm afraid all of this will have to start from this 7-colored conch. Let's increase our cultivation first." Green-robed Xiao Hua sighed. "Right now, what we lack is time. After returning from Dragon Island, it's best to go into seclusion. Moreover, it's a long period of seclusion. Ari, I also want to go into seclusion." Jade Archive Xiao Hua sighed. That inexplicable warning sign is still nowhere to be seen. If we can encounter it on Dragon Island, that's naturally good. In the future, I will definitely go into seclusion with peace of mind. Let's not talk about this anymore. Talking about it makes me cry. Green-robed Xiao Hua waved his hand again. A pearl fell into his hand. As he carefully rubbed it, the pearl gave off a cloud-like brilliance. Which of the other cultivators aren't in seclusion? When have I seen fellow cultivator in seclusion? Fellow cultivators have worked hard. Jade Archive Xiao Hua smiled. After I finish the matters on Dragon Island and remodel Little White's body, I will go into seclusion. I hope so. Green-robed Xiao Hua carefully hid the pearl and faintly said, "Fellow cultivator always says you will go into seclusion, but when has your wish ever come true?" Green-robed Xiao Hua finished speaking. With a wave of his hand, another pile of bones was thrown to the side. He no longer paid any attention to Jade Archive Xiao Hua. Jade Archive Xiao Hua faintly smiled. His figure entered the dark side of space. He looked at the death aura of the underworld fruit tree, then looked at the underworld lotus and the others before entering the soul formation sky. The soul formation sky didn't change much from before. Little White had shrunk extremely small under the light of the 12 divine shadows, and Soul Cultivator Xiao Hua had condensed a little under the green light. It seemed like Soul Cultivator Xiao Hua wouldn't be able to fully recover without a long period of accumulation. Xiao Hua's consciousness left the space. When he opened his eyes, he saw faint clouds hovering on both sides of the flying boat. The flying boat seemed to be cutting through the clouds. Fellow cultivator Ao. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Zhantian, who was focused on driving the flying boat. He took out a pill and handed it over. "This is a pill refined by me. Your injuries aren't light, so it's better for you to take it as soon as possible. Many thanks, spiritual master." Ao Zhantian didn't care about this pill. He originally wanted to put it away, but after hesitating for a moment, he still took the pill. Just as the pill entered his mouth, Ao Zhantian's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly sat down cross-legged and adjusted his breathing. He didn't even care about the flying boat. Xiao Hua stood up and released his divine sense. He slowed down the speed of the flying boat and leisurely shuttled through the clouds as if he was sightseeing. After a full hour, Ao Zhantian finally opened his eyes. He looked at Xiao Hua with great admiration and said, "Spiritual Master Xiao, I really didn't expect you to be able to refine such a good pill. The quality of the pill just now is the first I've seen in my life. Ian, here are a few more." Xiao Hua took out the pill. Couldn't he understand the meaning behind Ao Zhantian's words? With a wave of his hand, he took out a few more jade bottles and handed them to Ao Zhantian. He said, "This trip to the Dragon Island is very dangerous. If you have a few more pills, you'll be able to guarantee your safety. Many thanks, Spiritual Master." Ao Zhantian happily accepted the bottles and put them away.